Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price, $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
So, Ted, on our Steve Austin episode, I mentioned that the WCW hotline started teasing your arrival as early as April of 1996, and Meltzer mentioned that it may have been a valid rumor because your contract was due to expire in the fall with WWF.
Yeah.
So, Ted, let's start at the beginning of this story. Would it have been Eric Bischoff who would have reached out to you about coming into the company?
You know, I'm trying to I'm trying to personally remember how it all went down. I'm trying to think of who I spoke with initially, but obviously eventually I would have had to speak to Eric, and I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I know that in going back when I went back to WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Vince and I did have this conversation, and the attitude I had at the time was like, okay, I wasn't an active wrestler anymore. I had been a manager for some time, and now, I do this. Actually, I did the color commentary along with Vince for, I think what's the pay-per-view during Thanksgiving?
Survivor Series.
I think it was the Survivor Series, and Vince was fairly happy with what I did, and I said, well, gosh, if you think I could do it, I'd like to try to do it, and so I started going back to the WWF as a commentator, and then, but all that required me to do was to be in Stamford. One day a week, and
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, I would be there for 2 days, but it but once a week, and so it's 2 days every week, and I'm done. And it was doing voiceovers for a lot of the shows. I mean, occasionally we'd do something live, but most of the time it was watching the tape, and I think they paired me with Gorilla Monsoon, and he kind of helped me along anyway. So I was doing pretty good with that, but it didn't require me to go on the road. That's my whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And because, the road had been the road was danger. It's kind of like, you get back on the road, you get out there, and it's all my demons were on the road. So I didn't want to go back there. And nor did my wife want me to go back there. So but what happened with Vince is, he decided somewhere along the way I think he put me with Sid Vicious.
Yes.
And the deal was, it was kind of like Vince saying to me, I want you to help him keep both his oars in the water. Yeah. Oh boy. So
Good luck with that.
I get to go on this babysitting, job now. And so so now I'm a manager on the road, and the road is not a place I wanted to be. And, and so when the opportunity presented itself with WCW, basically they told me, they said, you can come to work for us and do exactly what you were doing. It's just going to require you to be there, every Monday night. You remember the Monday night, was it Monday Night Wars, right?
Yes, sir.
And so, and it would be a big shock, and it would be a big shock for me just showing up on their TV. So, when my contract was coming up due, I just, I didn't re-sign with Vince. And my attitude at the time was, Vince is a businessman, and he's a shrewd business guy. And he gave me a job post active wrestling career. I mean, 'cause once I had the neck injury, and the doctor told me, he said the odds are in your favor that it wouldn't happen, but he says you could, if you fell again the right way, you could end up paralyzed.
Oof.
I said, I ain't taking that chance.
Hell no.
And so now I'm a commentator. But what Bischoff basically offered me was this, you just come do for us what you were doing for them. And so, but now when I got over there, it was I was like part of the crew. And the other thing was, it was it was significant difference in pay. In terms of, this is a 3-year deal, no cut contract, and even if I don't work, I still get paid. And my biggest reason for leaving Vince was I didn't want to be on the road. And much later, when I did go back and work for them again, I had that conversation with Vince, and he said, Ted, he says, I'm telling you, he says, all you would have had to do is come and tell me.
Ugh.
And I said, I understand that now. But at the time, I told him, I look at it, it's like, you're a businessman, you're running a business, and, you had made a spot for me in terms of, a color commentator. But then when you sent me back on the road, it was like, the road was danger for me. And he says, all you would have had to done was to speak up, and I would have changed it. But anyway, hindsight's 2020.
A lesson for all of us: communication is key.
Yeah,
because who
absolutely.
knows? Maybe he would have come at you with a better offer and taken you off the road. So it's is what it is. But
Well, he
I
would
will.
have. He basically was saying, he says, if you'd have come and talked to me, I'd have just said, okay, you don't want to be on the road. I won't put you on the road. And because the only reason he had put me on the road was to basically kind of babysit that guy.
I know that you were averse to being on the road, and you're kind of getting thrust into this position all of a sudden. When you are on the road with Sid or whomever else, because I know that you had a bunch of guys there in the $1 Million Corporation.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because, for context, it's like a lot of times these shows finish up and then the guys are going out and they're hitting the bars and they're doing all this stuff that can get a guy in trouble, especially a married man.
Yeah.
So like under those circumstances, at the time you're like, whatever, late 30s, maybe early 40s.
Yeah.
Are you just like, I'm going right back to the hotel, or what was the plan for you?
Well, yeah, no, that was the plan for me. It's kind of like, babysitting, in terms of if he got it, or try to, keep the heat down, because, Sid was and I actually found him to be, he and I got along okay, but I could see where I could see what Vince was talking about, and he didn't always get along with everybody in the dressing room.
He was also fresh off a violent incident with one of your good friends, Arn Anderson, whenever he came into the WWF.
Yes, yeah, and which made that also a deal where I said, okay, I'll if this is what you want me to do, Vince, I will. But it's not like he and I are going to become buddy.
Right.
And there's two sides to every story, and I I think Sid should have, he did okay as a wrestler, but he should have stuck to baseball. He was certainly a very good, baseball player, and he loved to play. Or I don't know, it was baseball.
It was softball. It was softball,
and
I don't know that there would have been as much money in softball as there was in wrestling.
No,
to playing in whatever, like a summer beer league.
It was just one of those deals. Bottom line is, if I had just gone and talked to the boss, he said if I had understood where you were coming from, this wouldn't have had to happen. And because that was the whole idea, because I did get the opportunity with WCW to go back to what I was doing originally for Vince, just being a commentator and being just there one day a week.
Man.
You know, to go on the road with Sid required me, you know, they were working, I guess they, you know, they had started doing, I can't remember how many days they were doing a week, but I was doing more than one day, you know, in the studio now. And it's not really where I wanted to be.
So, you know, you're looking at a guaranteed contract, you're looking at less dates. So, I mean, a lot of positives here. But for full context, WCW had been a clear #2 wrestling organization for years at this point.
Yeah.
And you were really well established with the #1 company in the world.
Right.
So, when this is all happening, are you experiencing hesitation? Or once this deal is done, you're like, hey, I got guaranteed money, I'm good?
Well, there was some hesitation. There was some thought, you know, and of course that's what they, you know, that's always, you know, it's in history now, and they called it the wrestling wars, the Monday Night Wrestling Wars, and everybody's trying to top the other guy. And I mean, I said it from the get-go. I said there is no way that Eric Bischoff is ever going to top Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has been in this business most of his life. Eric Bischoff, I'm not even sure how Eric, you know, and I don't know. I've never listened to any stories, you know, and I had no problem with Eric. I just, you know, I knew here's a guy that somehow got thrust into this position, you know, whether that was through TBS or whatever, or decided to take to the position. But here's a guy who had never promoted wrestling of any kind or been a part of wrestling in any way, you know, taking over this job. But for me, it was the personal thing. It was I don't need to be on the road. Road is danger. And so if road is danger, stay away from danger. And, you know, because, you know, there had been a whole new, you know, I grew up a Christian, but I just kind of like a rock star, next town, next party, next, you know, whatever's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what the road, it does to a lot of people. But, you know, because this was just, you know, it was just crazy. Did I do okay? I did okay, but I didn't want to be there, is what I'm saying.
Right. You wanted to protect your marriage. You had that issue in '93, and now it was time to mature, you know. And I think a lot of fans hear the stories about the boys on the road, and they're like, "Oh, geez, you know, like these guys were just out of control." It's like, hey, man, picture being in your 20s, being in great shape, making excellent money, and people giving you a bunch of free shit all the time. Like that would be really, really hard.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention, you know, that it's kind of like a lot of guys. They go out party and they go to the bar, looking for a girl. Well, you know, when you're a wrestler, you don't have to look for the girl. The girl comes and finds you. And so that's the other deal. And and that was an issue in my life for sure. Well, and all of that to say, the other person that was very happy that I decided to go with Eric Bischoff and WCW was my wife.
You always want to keep the wife happy.
Yeah.
There's a life hack for you, gentlemen. Keep your wife happy.
Mm-hmm.
Hall and Nash had recently left WWF. Jeff Jarrett was out the door, and it seemed like at every turn here, WCW was just poaching talent from Vince, much the way that Vince had kind of done to Bill Watts back in the day with Mid-South and all his talent.
Mm-hmm.
Now the tables have turned, and all of a sudden, a bunch of Vince's talent that he's established on TV are turning over to the competitor. It makes me wonder, do you recall? I know that you had said that you and Vince, Vince said, well, we should have had a conversation about it. Did Vince ever come to you once you gave your 90-day notice or whatever and say like, hey, come on, let's work this thing out? Or did JR? I know he was the head of talent relations.
No.
Nobody made an effort to keep the $1 million man in the WWF.
Well, yeah, I wasn't a wrestler anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the top thing, and I had been a manager, but now I was, again, I'd done the commentating thing, and now I'm being a manager. But up until Vince asked me to go on the road with Sid, I was a manager on TV.
Okay.
The managers didn't have to make the house shows, but because Vince wanted somebody to kind of like babysit somebody, more or less, that's, and I figured, well, that's his prerogative. If that's what he wants me to do, then, so when the other offer came up, I just jumped on it. And again, he and I, and he told me, he said, Ted, you should have just come and talked to me.
Here's the other thing to consider is that at this point, WWF was really struggling financially. And being that you're a well-established personality in pro wrestling, I'm sure that you didn't come inexpensive, especially if they were putting you on the road at times for house shows when ordinarily they aren't putting managers on the road. So it's another big expense. So who knows? Maybe Vince was like, hey, like, I hate to see Ted go, but gosh, it's good to get something off the books so we can, try to turn a profit with this damn thing.
And actually, I didn't realize. Well, you research this stuff so much more than anybody, but I didn't realize that they were, having a financial issue.
So shortly after this period, Vince was actually having, I think, automatic light switches put on in Titan Towers so that lights wouldn't remain on in rooms so that they could save on the light bill. He was having the water coolers removed from the building so that they wouldn't. He was cutting expenses at every single corner during the Monday Night Wars when WCW was kicking their butt.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm sure that that was a contributing factor.
Well, and then too, to go over and the other guys that were there, the guys that jumped ship and went, and I think the biggest factor for most of those guys was until the WCW thing happened, and there was a legitimate, competitor. When Vince was the only show on the road, you had to take what you were given.
Yeah.
Basically, and this is the first, now that there's this contract issue, now there's somebody that can offer you as much or more money than you've been used to getting. And that became very competitive.
How do you compete with it when you're Vince? When the downside guarantee in those days was $1,500 a year, so it's kind of a handshake arrangement. Like, oh yeah, I'm guaranteeing you $1,500, but I'll pay you more. But he wasn't obligated to pay anybody any more than $1,500 per year. So yeah, hard to compete with all the money down there with Turner.
Yeah.
Well, March 28th, 1996 marks your final day with the WWF. They don't waste any time in making it clear on TV that you are no longer affiliated with the company. Meltzer speculates that that's to get out ahead of the perception that you're another invader from the WWF. So, Ted, the NWO hasn't officially formed yet at this point, and Bischoff has stated on his podcast that you had a great radio voice, and he originally envisioned you as an announcer for WCW. Did he or anyone else make any mention of plans as far as NWO is concerned, or was it just, hey, I'm going to bring you in as a manager and an announcer, and that was it?
Well, basically, if I remember right, that's what he said, is that he would bring me in, as I don't know, not as, and originally I thought it was as a commentator.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was pretty much it. So, but when the whole NWO thing got to going, and then you take into consideration, the character that everybody remembered, the $1 Million Man.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they couldn't call me the $1 Million Man anymore. So now it was what, the $1 trillion something.
Trillionaire Ted.
Trillionaire Ted. So basically, now I become the quasi funder of the New World Order, and that's the way that story went.
Man, it was a fun storyline.
Yeah.
And well, let's talk about Bischoff a little bit here. He's viewed, as you mentioned, as inexperienced by some, certainly rubbed some people the wrong way over the years, but there's no denying that he took a company which had been operating at a loss for years and started making profits with it even before the NWO came along. So when you came to WCW, it would have been the first time that you would have been around Bischoff, correct?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And what were your early impressions of him?
Well, I mean, initially I had no problem with him, but I mean, the other thing was that my hire by Bischoff was initially to be the mouthpiece of the New World Order. And but you got to realize the thing here's the difference. Eric Bischoff is looking for all the help he can get in terms of putting together a show and what's the storyline. Who's he counting on? He's counting on Paul, Nash, Hogan. These are all the top guys, right?
Right.
And they're still in the ring. I'm no longer in the ring. I'm a sidelighter. I'm a commentator. And end up turning manager thing. But
the point you're trying to make is that you can be impartial because you aren't out there trying to influence your own creative. Whereas a guy like Hogan, Hall, or Nash, they're still out there active as wrestlers, and they can position themselves by influencing Bischoff.
Yes, and again, this is where somewhere along the way, Eric starts. I said, Eric, you're doing what you hired me to do. I said, so, hey, look, I said, you want the spot, take it. You just send me home and I'll just collect a check. And that's what I did. I mean, I was like,
after the whole.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I let him know. I said, I don't know, I said, you hired me to be this guy, but obviously you become this guy. And I said, if you think I'm just going to walk out there every week and stand in the corner and be Hulk Hogan's belt bearer, I'm not Virgil. That's basically what I told him. And they hired him too.
I was going to say, then Virgil was there anyways. So you didn't even get to do that.
So,
well, it was cool seeing you with the Steiners. I can't wait to talk about that.
Well, that was it. It was kind of like, and it's the other thing I told Eric, this is a time when these opportunities for me to go out and speak as a Christian speaker. And I was also making appearances on religious television, like the 700 Club and stuff like that. And I shared that with Eric. And I said, now there's a lot of people who are seeing me on these religious, shows like the 700 Club, and periodic, appearances. And I said, so I don't know what you think. I said, but it's like they're seeing me on TV as this heel manager, but they're seeing the real live Ted DiBiase over here. So maybe, I don't know what you want to do. I said, but you might think about turning me babyface. And that's when he did it.
It worked pretty well.
They turned me babyface, put me with the Steiners for a while, but it was,
I don't know. I always enjoyed seeing you with the Steiners. I thought it was kind of a unique pairing. Again, we've mentioned it here on the show before. We're going to do a full episode on the Steiners, not just you as a manager for them, but also when you were feuding with them as part of Money Inc. So there's a lot to cover there. We'll get there one day. Eric is always pretty quick to speak his mind, which is one of the things I've always admired about him in the time I've been around him. He's just really straightforward. Mm-hmm. I know that some talents didn't care for his demeanor at times. Would you say that, aside from, having to have that conversation with him, did you always generally get along with him pretty well?
Yeah. I had no, I had no problems, with him. I mean, it's kind of like, here's the position you brought me in for. And apparently you've seen your way to, it's like, it's your show, you're running the show. As long as I knew that would be now where it would have become an issue is if I wasn't on that guaranteed contract.
Yes.
If I was working like, for Vince and basically what Vince was, he's guaranteeing you almost nothing really. And so it's almost like the old days where you're just getting paid week to week by whatever's in the house.
Yes.
Now if that had been the issue, then I'd have been screaming.
So Ted, as you're awaiting the expiration of your WWF contract so you can make your big debut, the wrestling world is completely turned on its head. After more than a decade as the ultimate babyface, the biggest star in the history of wrestling turns heel at Bash of the Beach 1996 on June 7th. The third man in Hall & Nash's group is revealed to be Hulk Hogan, and the group is officially named the New World Order. So, Ted, Hulkamania officially comes to an end, and Hogan immediately becomes the top heel in the business after being the biggest babyface ever in the business since 1984. When you're first hearing about him turning heel, are you convinced that the whole thing is going to work, or were you concerned that fans might completely reject the idea of this version of Hulk Hogan?
Oh no, here's the thing about the wrestling. If you're a huge, irregardless whether you're a heel or you're a babyface, whatever you were when you turn, if the hotter the babyface you are, and then you turn, that it just adds fuel to the fire. It just makes you hotter. Now you turn bad. It's like I did it in Mid-South. I had been a babyface in Mid-South since I started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody in Mid-South saw me start. I started in the summer of '75, and I kept going back to work for Bill Watts. But when I turned heel, that's like that's like insulting the people, right? You're going to turn heel on us. Then they hated me that much more, and the same thing happened to Hulk.
Man, it certainly worked. I mean, that crowd reaction at Bash at the Beach, a fan hit the ring and Nash had to punch him out, like tons of trash being thrown into the ring, just like holy smokes, unbelievable heat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had to just be chomping at the bit to get in there and be part of that, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that was and to be part of the NWO was cool. NWO for life.
Man, it was awesome, your debut. We'll be watching that here shortly. As we work our way toward your debut, I did want to ask you about a couple other interesting notes here in WCW at the time. One is that former Super Bowl winner Steve Mongo McMichael is an active wrestler in the company at this time, and he's become a member of one of the most legendary groups in pro wrestling, the Four Horsemen. Did you get to spend a lot of time around Steve? I
did. He was a great guy. Obviously he didn't know a whole lot about wrestling, but he was, I found him to be a really nice guy.
I've heard that sentiment echoed a lot, and Arn Anderson says a lot about the Four Horsemen. Like, hey, if you want to be a Four Horseman, you got to be able to work. You got to be able to make your opponent shine. You've got to have a good promo. He was like, there's a lot of criteria you have to meet to be a Horseman, and it's like Steve Mongo McMichael did not meet a lot of that criteria.
No, he didn't.
However, like Flair and I believe Arn, pretty much anybody was like, oh no, he was a Horseman. Yeah. No, he was, just because he was a great guy, and he was apparently a legendary partier as well.
Well, I don't know.
So you were staying away from that.
By that time, I was.
So one other side note, another angle that's starting up as you come into the company is the Blood Runs Cold storyline. This is happening right when you come into the company, which is Glacier. So he's working in a martial arts gimmick here, which is clearly inspired by the video game Mortal Kombat. He's got this crazy elaborate entrance with snow and lasers and karate shit going on. So Ted, you're an old school guy. When you see a character introduced like this, do you think, okay, this is the future of wrestling, or what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm an old school guy. And I thought an old school way. To me, it was like, what is this crap? I mean, are you serious? What is this crap? It's kind of like, it's sometimes it's hard to make chicken salad out of
chicken shit. I'll say it so you don't have to.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, for all the great stuff that was happening in WCW during this era where it felt like they just couldn't miss, there were still some misses, and I think the Glacier was one of them. Um, so Ted, on the 729 Nitro, Hall and Nash attacked Arn Anderson, Marcus Bagwell, Scotty Riggs, and Rey Mysterio in the parking lot during a taping at Disney. This angle was apparently realistic enough that there was real emergency response called in. I mean, this is some absolute craziness. If you remember this, you weren't there yet, so I don't know if you were watching, but I mean, they were holding aluminum bats, but they dropped them as soon as the camera hit them because apparently that would be going too far on TV at that time. But it's a really realistic angle in wrestling during a time when, I mean, just in February of '96, Razor Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid had a crybaby match in the WWF. So, I mean, like, all of a sudden, WCW is going the complete opposite direction with their creative and getting really, really kind of realistic and gritty. It marked a big transition in wrestling to a more gritty, adult-oriented product. What did you think of this change?
That's always been, you know, and again, I'm that old school. I mean, I grew up in the business, and you understand. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, when you're a little kid and somebody tells you, okay, it's magic. I'm going to make this thing disappear, and they make it disappear. I mean, it's sleight of hand. You don't know how they did it, but you did. You believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we, as in the wrestling industry, understood. You know, if you watch wrestling long enough and you've ever been in a real fight, you know, there's a lot of things that you're going to say and you'll go, wait a minute. It's kind of like if, you know, if a guy grabs you by the head of the hair and runs you all the way across the ring into a turnbuckle. If you were in a real fight, could somebody actually grab you by the, you know, if you didn't want to go, you know, he might pull your hair out, but you're not going, you know, so it's the realism. And the more realistic you can make it, the better. That's always been, you know, and it was, you know, like, I don't know, I think it was Arn Anderson, you know, because Arn was a producer for them for a lot longer. I mean, I tried to, and I just, no, it wasn't me. I mean, to this point, it was hard for me to be a producer because I couldn't sit down with two guys and map out a whole match.
Right.
Why? Because I never did that.
You got to feel the audience.
I mean, it's like I never did it. And if I never did it, how am I going to sit down and, you know, it's just, it made no sense to me. That was the biggest problem. It's like, now if I had history with a guy, if I had had a couple of matches with him, I might go, okay, based on what the people saw last week, maybe we should start this match tonight this way.
Right.
You know, and of course, so I might know the very beginning of the match. And of course, the only other thing I knew was the finish, because the finish, whatever that finish is the hook to get you back the following week. And that's all I ever knew. So to sit down with two wrestlers and map out a match, I couldn't do it. And to me, that's what's missing. I mean, it's kind of like, and I think Arn was told me, he said, Ted, he says, Vince doesn't really like wrestling. And I went, what? He says, you know, wrestling is kind of like the bastard child of the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always wanted to make it something more acceptable. And I went, I never thought of that, you know. And so let's make this big soap opera out of it. And so you got, you know, this going on in the ring, and then you cut away to, you know, confrontation in the locker room, and, you know, out on the street and whatever. And, you know, I could see where some of that is okay, but to make the whole show a soap opera, and, you know, which to me is the thing that everybody and here's totally, to this day, I still have people come up to me, guys who are in their like 40s now, you know, who were little boys when I was in my prime, and or who had been watching wrestling for a longer deal. And that, you know, the thing they all say, the thing that's missing, it seems to be, is realism in the ring. In other words, you know, it's kind of like, you know, like a lot of the guys, I mean, I'll be honest with you. The last couple times I've watched any of the show, or the girls, the ladies division of the WWE, in my opinion, have more believable matches than the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the only one that feels that way. And it seems like, the guys go out there and it's almost like an acrobatic act. It's all high spots. It's, like a triple back somersault all over the top rope to the floor and bounce up like nothing happened to you.
Right.
Sell it. Nobody's selling anything anymore. So when you go into a movie, it's a movie. But what makes it real to you is the actors are so good at making you believe what they're doing is real. Well, it's the same thing with wrestling. Wrestling used to be wrestling, and it's like, two guys on the mat, and, this guy's working a headlock and the other guy's working an arm or a leg or whatever. And the story goes on and it's back and it's forth. And then occasionally there's a high spot. That's why we call them high spots, because they were high spots. The whole match is not a high spot. It's a high spot. Anyway, I don't know how many of the fans listening are going to understand what I'm saying.
I think they do. And look, it's, to your point, fans, we all know that wrestling is work, but we want to suspend our disbelief. If you went to go see an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, let's say Terminator, and he's like gunning people down, and then all of a sudden he just turns to the camera and gives a wink, like all of a sudden you'd be like, hey, what the fuck? Like, you took me right out of the moment,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what some of these guys do nowadays. They're not necessarily overtly winking at the camera, but like some of the unbelievable stuff that they're doing, where it's like, a tope suicida over the top rope into a group of guys and you spring right back up like nothing happened, nobody's selling.
Exactly.
Takes you out of it.
Exactly. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. It's they've taken that away. It's like, sell it. That's the whole deal is, if I ever took a bump over the top rope to the floor, I'm going to lay there and sell it, and, oh my gosh, I don't even want to. I don't want to get off on it.
Well,
I don't want to get off on my horse, but yeah, that's what's missing is realism. A real believable match. It's kind of like, it was very, it wasn't. It was kind of like. Now it would be like. And I know they don't have it. I don't believe, I haven't seen anybody bleed on TV for a while, and I don't think they have for a long time. But in wrestling, as I knew it, it was like the only time you were going to see two guys bleed or one guy bleed is in a main event, where it's a serious match, like like a Texas death match or whatever you want to call it. And of course the way we did that was, it was real blood. It wasn't Hollywood blood. You made you had a little razor blade. Some guys would tape it to their finger, and when it's the right time, you just hit your head a couple times. If you look at my head, there's a lot of, well, you can't hardly see them anymore, but
that means you did a good job.
Yeah, and you would, if you were going to bleed, you would take an aspirin because it thins your blood, or maybe a little shot of, literally a little shot of whiskey or something, because it thins your blood. So when you do it, it's like, you got a little slice with a razor blade, with just the tip of that blade, and it looks like Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm. But when you actually look at what it is, it's not that much. And the believability's gone. In my opinion, it's just gone. It's just not realistic to me anymore.
And even the blood, it's AEW has blood pretty often. But here's the thing: is if you do blood too often, then blood doesn't mean anything to the audience anymore.
Exactly.
So you really got to kind of walk a fine line.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if this is still historically true, but my dad and Dory Funk Sr., had a Texas death match in Amarillo, Texas. And the rules of a Texas death match were falls don't count. In other words, you can have 20 falls. So the deal is somebody, it's a fall, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now there's a 30-second, I think it was either 30 seconds, I think it was 30-second rest period. Like after that 1, 2, 3, 30 seconds. And then if you weren't to your feet by the count of 10, you lose. And falls could happen anywhere, in the ring, on the floor, out in the parking lot. I mean, and my dad and Dory Funk Sr. did this for 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Ooh.
And I think they periodically they sent them back to the dressing room to have a doctor look at them. And I don't know if that was part of the show, probably, but imagine keeping the attention of all those people, just two guys, for 3 hours and 15 minutes. They were letting people in off the street. And the match ended in a draw. Why? Because there was a curfew on the building, and because the police stopped the match because the building couldn't be open to the public past a certain hour.
You put the heat on the police. That's the way.
But I mean, but I mean, again, they bled, and of course they actually hard weighed each other. It's like, they each took one, take one for the boss, right? So it's
right.
For the business.
Like a strike down, right? You got to punch down on a guy's eyebrow to get him to bleed. I think that's a technique.
Yeah.
Man, bygone era for sure. And certainly, nowadays, if there was a 3-hour match, everybody would tune out. Nobody would be able to sit there. It's it's the age of instant gratification. So we'll never see anything like that again, unfortunately.
Right.
So, Dad, we're getting near the finish line. But before your debut, Hog Wild 1996 takes place in Sturgis, and Hogan wins the WCW World Title and spray paints it. Huge heat, absolutely unstoppable momentum here for the NWO. Ted, this heel turn for Hogan, affiliation with the NWO, it would be a huge career resurgence for him. All of a sudden, crowds were booing Hulk Hogan here in WCW up until this heel turn. When he was a babyface, he was getting booed because people were just getting tired of his shtick. It'd been happening for 12 years. Now, all of a sudden, his career he's right back on top, but now he's on the other side as a heel. As you're seeing this, are you thinking like, hey, maybe it's going to be a big resurgence for me in my career when I come in?
I don't know if I saw it so much that way. I mean, by that time, it's kind of like I grew up in the business. I had put in, 20, by the time it was all over, I think 20 years. I started, okay, what would it be? I started in the summer of 75. So 75, 85. And what was this, 94 or 95?
96.
It was 96. So it's okay. 75, 85, 95. So 21 years.
That's a good long career.
Yeah. And by that time, I'm not. It's kind of
you're not looking for a big resurgence.
No. I'm not looking for a big resurgence. But I mean, in terms for Hulk, though, the deal with him turning heel, I think you would agree with it. That was the right thing to do because and again, back in the old territorial days of wrestling, the reason guys moved around like that was things get old. So it was like you would wrestle in one territory. Maybe you spent a year there, or it depended on who you were, how over you were, or maybe you spent a couple years there. But then after a couple of years, you would leave. You'd go somewhere. You'd go to another territory where you're fresh and new because it was all regional television. And, you'd go from Georgia Championship Wrestling. Of course, Georgia was the first place that had the coast to coast cable anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But you worked for Mid-South, for Bill Watts for a couple of years. And, you wore out your welcome, so to speak. So you go somewhere else and you wrestle for a year or two. and then when they bring you back, you're fresh again. That's how wrestling used to be. So, because everything, too much of a good thing gets old, right?
Right.
So you just got to change things. So, like again, Hogan had been the guy. I mean, for how many years?
12 at this point.
12 years of this, big baby face, good guy Hulk Hogan. And yeah, it was time. It was like, show me, like, okay, we've seen this. Let's get something new. Well, he turns heel. He's brand new again.
It certainly worked
Yeah.
in a big way. And Ted,
Yeah.
what else worked was your debut. The big day finally arrives. It's August 26th. You make your debut right there on Nitro, and we've got the clip right now.
We'll be here in action. A lot of people talking about him. Oh! Wait a minute. What's going on?
Oh no!
What in the world?
Oh my goodness!
Not again.
You know who that is?
Ted DiBiase.
Without a doubt.
I want to know why DiBiase evidently bought a ticket, making his way. Ted DiBiase crashing the party here on Nitro, and we've seen this before.
He is here for a reason, I guarantee you. I know the man. He is strictly business.
The Giant misses the elbow drop. Did you see the elevation on the Giant? We've said it in the last couple of weeks, ever since that beating he took at the hands of Hogan and the NWO. He is one enraged Giant.
Duggan taping that fist. No effect.
Where in the heck did DiBiase go?
I don't know.
Duggan wanting him to step into the punch, and it still has no effect.
Still on his feet.
Hacksaw! Hacksaw trying to get the 2x4. Nick Patrick. Now there's a man I don't trust with a 2x4.
Watch this. Watch this. Can he do it?
Going for the choke slam.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Oh. Oh. What
One,
strength. What power.
2, 3. No hesitation in that 3 count. And look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is that, the Four Horsemen?
What does that mean?
He just said next week. 5.
Man, that is how you debut somebody. Just coming through the crowd, very realistic. Again, the realism of the whole angle. The NWO felt like it felt like everything that was happening in pro wrestling was kind of sort of okay. I'll suspend my disbelief for this, but then the NWO stuff is happening. It's like, man, this is kind of real. Just a hell of a reaction from excited crowd. You're the 4th member of the NWO, so I mean, like, there's significance there, Ted. This is the hottest group in wrestling. You've got Hulk Hogan, Hall, Nash, and they're just red hot. And who's the 4th guy? It's you. And it's just, man, it worked out really well.
It was 4, and in the deal, I said next week it's going to be 5.
Right.
Which meant I was going to be the 5th member, wasn't it?
No, so you were number 4, and you were saying next week we're bringing in another guy. It's going to be the 5th member.
Who was that?
Well, so according to the research I was doing, Davey Boy Smith had given his notice to the WWF at this time, and so he was apparently they were thinking either him or Sean Waltman was getting ready to come in. But apparently the thing with Davey fell through, and so they wound up making it the Giant, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Wow. First, I do want to know your first day in a new wrestling company, Ted. After all these years in the WWF, you're starting new again. What do you remember about your arrival here in WCW?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like there wasn't anybody in the locker room I didn't know, so it was just a change of pace, change of scenery. And again, I thought the idea of having me seated in the crowd and walking out of the crowd was pretty cool, So
It worked.
It worked.
And
It worked.
what a cool visual on TV where it's like, you know, you're sitting there in the crowd and yeah, no, it was fantastic. You know, we hear a lot that wrestlers will say working for the WWF is like working for this like finely oiled machine, while working for WCW could be chaos. Are you seeing a lot of differences in production, management, talent behaviors?
Oh gosh, it's unbelievable. And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of like, you know, working for the WWE, in my opinion, was better because it did become a fine-tuned machine. Because that chaos. I mean, when I was in WCW for the little time that I was actually there and wasn't sitting at home getting a check. It was chaos every week. It's like I can remember being in the locker room, and I mean the show has started. You know, it's halfway over, and they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do in the main event. That's pretty scary.
Yikes.
Yeah. I remember seeing that, and I went, "Oh my God." And again, you got that's that constant power struggle. Hogan, Nash, and Hall.
And guys like Hogan had creative control, which means that TV could have been written the week before, and then Hogan gets a TV and they're like, "Hey, here's what we're doing tonight," and he could just say, "Nope, not doing that," and then they have to rewrite it right there on the spot.
Yeah.
So that's a tough position to be in. Can certainly understand why there were some issues behind the scenes. So Ted, I've heard some fans over the years say that your character wasn't really a perfect fit with the renegade style of the NWO. You know, they were portrayed as almost like kind of a punk biker gang, and then you arrive and you're wearing a suit. You've got kind of like this corporate vibe. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm curious as to your take. Did you feel like you meshed well with Hogan, Hall, and Nash here?
Well, I mean, I don't know how well I meshed, but I mean, it was kind of like, it's like, I think what it was supposed to represent was, you know, here's this conglomerate coming together, and it's been building, and it's like I show up, and it's almost like I show up, and now this is the money. This is how this whole thing came together. It was, I think, the story they were trying to tell, that all this time it had been me, you know, building the team.
Funding them.
Yeah, funding them. So,
and not to mention, it's, you know, we've got Hall and Nash making the jump from the WWF. So there's a couple WWF guys coming in. Hogan was like the ultimate WWF guy. Like, you know, when people thought of Hulk Hogan, they thought about Hulkamania in the WWF and slamming Andre. So that one makes sense. Now here you are fresh off WWF TV and you're coming in. So like all of these additions in my mind make sense, where we're trying to build a story like, hey, these are guys who are disenchanted from the WWF, but they don't like what's going on here in WCW. So they're coming in to take over. That all makes sense to me. The next week, however, as we referenced, the Giant joins the NWO. And I feel like that was where we started to go off the rails a little bit, as far as like, okay, how does he fit into this? He feels like a weird puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit with the rest. What did you think of the Giant being added to the group so quickly after you?
Well, yeah, it's like to have additions is one thing, but you know, you don't, you know, to just 1 week after the next and after the next, it's kind of like you need to spread them out. But then how big are you gonna let it get? You know, I don't know.
And that's the thing. It feels like if there was somebody on TV who like wasn't doing much, they'd like throw him an NWO shirt, and then all of a sudden, okay, he's in the group, and he's, you know, there's another guy standing behind Hogan while he's doing a promo. So it was. I think that was where we started to go off the rails a little.
Well, yeah. Well, and then Eric.
Right.
Gosh, the guy running the show, I mean, legitimately running the show, joins the NWO, you know, and basically what he did was he basically, in my opinion, he came in and basically took the spot that I would have been.
So like all these additions did not work. Something that did work really well with the NWO was this unique pre-produced promo style that we got in black and white. We're going to close out this week's episode with your first promo in that style. It's a pretty fun watch.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
The demise of the
WCW. First page. Easy. We're not here for a stinking reason, man. We got our boss with us.
Ted DiBiase.
This is the boss.
Ted DiBiase has more money than Ted Turner. He makes Ted Turner look like a pauper.
Hey, this is his belt. We've already established who we are. I'm the world's champion, not the WCW world's champion. We've already established how powerful we are. Sure, we hit, then we split. I'll be the man. We've taken on our best, and there it is. Well, you guys back me up. We got your belt. New World Order. World Heavyweight Championship belt. It's the rule of the street, right? You tag it, it's up. Hey, what about this guy? I warned everybody. He did such a great job. Nobody believed, number one, who the fifth guy was when they saw him. I said, next week he's coming. The NWO has shaken WCW to its founding. It rattled.
Whether you like it or you don't like it, the NWO's here to stay. Learn to love it.
It wasn't like it was a big surprise. Change is inevitable. You don't like that, you can stick it. They want us so bad. They have agreed to this match. The question is just how bad we want it. You know, this just didn't happen, man. They don't even know who they're gonna face. Ted DiBiase, the master plan. It's been around for a long time. I've done this before, man. Stuck it to him right in the back. Feels good, doesn't it, guys? Doesn't it? Don't you think they would have saw it coming? You're just now unloading them, you know? It's the battle plan. You go in and you create confusion and chaos. They want us in that cage. Well, what do we get? First of all, our own segment on their show. We don't face it. Yes. We want our own tag team tournament. NWO. We have our own segment. We highlight our talent. We beat you. You pay the bill. You know what I think? From now on, we're going to turn it like this because it's NWO for life.
The preceding announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
That just looked like fun.
Yeah, wow. Man, it's been so long since I've seen that. I totally forgot that. I had totally forgotten that. Wow. That brings back a good memory.
I mean, what a huge change too, where it's, you know, for years it was like, okay, you're going to stand up here and do your promo about, you know, being in Poughkeepsie next week or whatever thing you're going to do. And now we're doing something completely different with this kind of guerrilla style, quick cut sound bites. What did you think of this new promo style?
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, anything new is good. Anything new, anything different. You know, I wouldn't say anything, but you know, something like that. Anything you can change it up and give it a different and just tweak it. You know, that's great.
Okay, guys, let's take a quick minute to talk about our great sponsor, BlueChew. Let me tell you guys, I get asked about BlueChew all the time, and the question is pretty much always the same. Does it actually work? Well, look, if you're asking that question, it's time for you to find out for yourself if BlueChew is working. They put their money where their mouth is, pal, because they're giving you a month for free. There is nothing worse than when you get into the bedroom, you're ready to go, your partner's ready to go, but you look down and your little pal down there is just staring at the carpet. Let's get that guy back to work with BlueChew. BlueChew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. BlueChew tablets are made right here in the good old US of A and prepared and shipped direct to your door. You want to know the best part? It's done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no weird, awkward, uncomfortable conversations anymore, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready when that opportunity arises. We have all heard the saying, it's important to have confidence. People like confidence. Women like confidence. And if you're going into the bedroom without confidence, you are not going to perform well. It's not going to be a fun experience. Why not give yourself an opportunity to leave a lasting impression on your partner? Who knows? It might just be the best sex of your life that you've been missing out on. Come on, time to take advantage. Try it for a month for free and see for yourself. I think that you're going to love it. And I think more importantly, your partner's going to love it. BlueChew has told me this themselves. They want men rock hard. They've been saying that. That's their mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, till every 10 is pitched, till every rod is raised. It's time to discover your options at BlueChew.com. We've got a special deal for our audience. Try BlueChew free. Just pay $5 shipping at checkout when you visit BlueChew.com. That's BlueChew.com to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank BlueChew for sponsoring Everybody's Got a Pot. First thing I wanted to ask you about was something I missed last month when we were discussing August 1996 in WCW. Chris Jericho made his debut with the company on 8/20 against Jerry Lynn. Ted, Chris is still in the business today, still top of the game, really, working at a high level with AEW. And I know that a lot of people consider him one of the best ever. I'm wondering about your thoughts when it comes to Chris Jericho.
I know Chris. Personally, I've known him to be a good guy. I mean, he's like anybody else in the business. Like he might have 6 friends and one enemy. I don't know. I don't know if Chris has got a lot of enemies. I don't think so. And one of the things that Chris did. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but he set up a deal where fans and wrestlers, and obviously he found a way for the wrestlers to go at a very discounted price or free a cruise.
The Jericho cruise, yes.
The Jericho cruise. Is he still doing it?
Yes, sir, he is.
He hasn't called me.
We're calling you out right now, Chris. Give Ted a ring. Get him back on the cruise.
Yeah, but I can't remember what time of year he does them, but I guess he does it annually. But I went on, and you know what? And initially I thought, wait a minute. So I'm going to be on a cruise ship, and I can't remember whether it was a 4-day cruise or a 7-day cruise. But either way, I'm going to be on a cruise ship, and you're out in the middle of the ocean. There's nowhere to escape with a boat full of wrestling fans.
Could get wild.
So I was like, but you know what? It worked out fine. And the fans were, and they were pretty cool. They were understanding of, these guys, because there were opportunities during that time period where all of us were there to sign autographs and meet him and greet him and take pictures with him and everything. And it worked out pretty good. So yeah, the Jericho cruise.
That's awesome. And I've talked to a few talents that have been on the Jericho cruise, and they all say what a great experience it is and that they love going to do it. So yeah, certainly sounds like a blast. I'd love to get on the Jericho cruise at some point. It sounds like a hell of a party. So yeah, we'll have to make that happen someday. But
back to Chris's talent. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, one of the most talented guys in the business, and I didn't know that he was still working. I mean, how old would he be now?
I know that he's in his 50s. I can't remember his exact age, but he looks great. And he used to do that lion salt, like a moonsault off the middle rope. He still does it. So I mean, he's kept himself in really great shape. And yeah, it's he continues to have excellent matches even at this age. So it's fun to watch him. Nowadays, a lot of fans are really critical when they see Chris Jericho matches. Most people are still really happy to see him out there. A lot of people are critical because they're like, he doesn't have it anymore. He's not as good as he used to be. It's like, hey guys, he's in his 50s. So why don't we all just enjoy the fact that he's still out there wrestling and what he can do. And, it's because, 20 years from now, he's not going to be wrestling anymore, presumably. No. So let's enjoy it while we've got it.
I retired, it's like I retired from the ring at age 40. And, a lot of guys, there are a lot, like you said, just like Chris, there are guys who stay in shape well enough to, I would say if you hang around after 50, I wouldn't expect you to be doing too much. There's some guys, and I won't mention any names, that I see hang around way, way beyond their prime. And, it's almost embarrassing, it's like, I feel sorry for him, but I wouldn't put Chris Jericho in that category.
No, certainly not. And man, if you saw him in the shape he's kept himself in over these years, it's like, hey, like he might not be as fast as he used to be. Maybe he can't like get to his spots as quickly as he once was able to, but man, the guy can still go. So yeah, great guy. Ted, we're getting ready for Fall Brawl here in September, and that means the War Games match. 2 rings, an enormous steel cage that covers both rings, and the cage even has a roof on it, so there's no escape but the entrance. It's a really cool concept in an era when the WWF was still just using that big, stiff blue cage that I know you're familiar with. Ted, what did you think of the War Games concept in WCW?
Good idea. I mean, he's just figuring out who's going to do what to who.
I know you were on the road back when the War Games match was invented by Dusty Rhodes. It was he had watched the Road Warriors movie, or whatever that's called, with Mel Gibson.
I know. I can't think of it either, but I know what you're talking about.
Right. So he had watched the movie, and he invented the War Games match as kind of like his own Thunderdome. And the Four Horsemen made the match famous. Now, because you were so busy, Ted, did you ever get an opportunity to watch any of those epic matches in JCP?
I don't think I did. I heard about all of them, but I don't know. I don't know that I was ever present for one.
I know that you weren't present for any of them, but man, those matches really kind of set the standard for the War Games match, and it became, this tradition in WCW, and we're continuing the tradition here at Fall Brawl 96. In the first week of September in WCW, it's got you coming down through the crowd again and hanging around, looking anxious for a little while before departing. Later, you'd be seen getting into an NWO limousine with another mystery wrestler, and Sting and Luger would steal a police car to give chase. On that same night, Hall and Nash and Hogan would come out after a main event featuring the Four Horsemen versus the Dungeon of Doom, and a big surprise takes place. Let's check it out in our first clip this week.
Everybody, they're going after the Dungeon of Doom.
Well, I can see that the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen are now together, representing World Championship.
Here comes the Giant. Look out, NWO.
Thank God for the Giant.
Never thought we would hear it. The Giant is going to have their lunch. The Giant is in the building. Whoa, 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 whoa. The Giant.
What is
the Giant? No! No!
What is going on here?
Can't be! No! No! This is impossible! The Macho Man Randy Savage! The Macho Man! The Macho Man is going after Hogan! Hogan takes him down! Nash with the double sledge! Oh, Savage! Savage is in trouble now! Savage is being painted, and now they've got yellow paint. Oh man, a yellow streak up the back of the Macho Man Randy Savage.
All right, so I mean, it's a pretty hot angle, dude, with this spray paint gimmick and, turning on some of the most beloved people. And now the Giant is part of the NWO here. What'd you think watching it back?
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, it was like, you know what? It was one of those things that got real hot. It was one of those things that comes along every now and then. And you can plan it, you can do this and do that, and but you're never just really sure, how well it's going to get over until you do it. And that got over just huge. I mean, again, the biggest angle in all of wrestling was not any angle the WCW or the WWF was doing. The biggest angle in wrestling was the war between the two companies.
Yep.
And that's what kept all the fans watching. They're watching all of it. They're going from one to the other every week to see what's going to happen next.
And at this time, WWF was just soundly getting their asses kicked every single week in the ratings because the NWO was just red hot, and surprises like this kept happening. Where okay, all of a sudden the Giants, and we got to see what that looks like.
Well,
And
and part of the reason for it going down that way is because, and I'll be honest, here's all these stars that were made by Vince McMahon.
Yep.
And then one after another, including yours truly, leaves and goes to the other ship.
That was a huge element, yes, because all of a sudden these fantasy matchups that people had been picturing, like, hey, what if Razor Ramon, wrestled William Regal? Like all of a sudden, these fantasy matchups become a reality in pro wrestling during this era. So I think that fans were really engaged. Another thing that was happening during this time was that Eric Bischoff was giving away the results of WWF Raw because it was pre-taped in these days. So Eric Bischoff during the show would say, hey, don't bother turning the channel to Raw because here's what happens. Here's the match they've got. Here's who won, and giving away the results. So he's like, don't even bother turning the channel.
I never knew that.
Yeah. What do you think, Ted? Is it kind of fair play, or do you think that's going a little bit too far against competition?
Well, it's like all is fair in love and war, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to win, you pull out all stops. So I would. Hey, you know what? Vince probably would have done the same thing. Can't be certain, but but I'm just saying, and again, I get along with Eric great now. I mean, I have no problem with Eric, but at the time, Eric Bischoff didn't really know that much about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and I don't know who at in the Turner scheme of things hired him and made him the guy over all their wrestling programming, but he's a guy who virtually had no background in wrestling,
which makes the whole thing even more unprecedented. I mean, here's this guy who's really got kind of more of a TV and sales background, and yes, he'd spent some time in the AWA as an announcer, and he did a great job as an announcer. But that's what makes this whole thing even more unprecedented. Is here's this guy who's not a wrestling guy really, but he's coming in, and I mean, WCW is turning a profit for the first time since its inception under his watch. So he was doing something right.
Well, and again, just to further the point made by the WWF $1 Million Man, everybody's got a stinking price, and Ted Turner was handing out the big bucks to grab all this talent. I mean, and I signed one time I had a 3-year no cut contract. I mean, they had to pay me whether I was there or not.
Mm-hmm.
I had never had that. And, it's nobody's business how much I got. But that's the other thing is that I think this is the beginning of guaranteed contracts.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because until this happened, the WWF was they're the only show on the road. It's kind of like if you're going to work for Vince, here's what I'm going to pay you. And he never really tells you. Well, I don't know. I mean, some guys might be different. I don't know that came after. I'm sure that came after me, but maybe some that came before me. I wasn't, the biggest draw ever, but it was kind of like, take it or leave it.
I've heard wrestlers say in the past that, they didn't know what kind of a year they were going to have in the WWF until they got their WrestleMania payoff. Then they were like, okay, this will kind of show me, sort of what I can project out for the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
So now you're going from that where it's all very, very uncertain to now it's like, I know exactly what I'm going to make, when I'm going to make it. And I don't even necessarily have to be here in order to collect it.
And again, that's what was appealing to me. But, business is business. And I know, but I mean, based on how well I'd have been treated by Vince, and there was part of me that it was kind of like, yeah, man, but he's treated you so well, but he has treated, even Vince said it though, when he down the road, and he hired me back. He says, when it comes right down to it, Ted, he says it's all about business.
Yep.
It's all about business, and you did what you had to do at the time to make business suit you, and rightfully so. So it was kind of like, you know, he says, hey, I get it. He gets it. What does he get? Everybody has a stinking price. You know, what is your price? You know, it's like, you know, if you had the opportunity to go somewhere else and make more money and do less, would you not do it? Of course.
Not to mention, you know, you're coming into WCW here and you're on guaranteed money and less days, and you're getting involved in the hottest angle in professional wrestling. I mean, you'd be a fool not to get yourself involved in that. And, you know, Ted, we discussed that moment with the Giant here becoming an NWO member on our joining the NWO episode here, you know, a month or so back. Which is available now in our archives. The Giant, Paul White, is being touted as the son of Andre, and he really made a big splash here in his short time in wrestling. What were your first impressions of him whenever you met him? Did you see Andre like potential?
I don't think I saw Andre potential, but I saw potential. I mean, number one, he's a great guy. Personally, he's a great guy. You know, I don't know anybody. You'd have to be a real butthole not to be able to get along with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in terms of, I saw a lot of potential, but but again, the Andre that I knew was the Andre that had already put in several years and had a lot of ring savvy and knew how to carry himself and knew how he had mastered the art of wrestling. All of these other people that were, you know, half his size and making him look good.
Yes.
You know, and I think it took Paul a little time to figure that out.
You know, Eric Bischoff has talked about Paul on his podcast, 83 Weeks, and he said that, you know, it's easy to paint yourself into a corner when you're booking a big man. And by that he means, you know, it's really easy to make a big man a heel because, you know, they're bigger than everybody else and they can take advantage and you know, really put a baby face in peril. He's like, how do I make Paul White a baby face? He was like, it's difficult to book him as a baby face because it's not very believable to put him in peril against people. And so he's like, so it's really easy to kind of paint yourself into a corner with booking and run out of ways to book a guy that size. Yeah. So it's interesting, and I mean, certainly a great athlete, and what an asset here in WCW at the time. Meltzer is pretty critical of the way that the situation was handled here in the ring with the NWO beatdown, because NWO essentially beat up 8 guys before the Giant even came down to the ring. You know, with the upcoming issues between the NWO against the Four Horsemen, Meltzer felt it made the Horsemen look weak. Do you feel like it weakened the Horsemen at all, kind of going into Fall Brawl?
I don't know. I don't really think so. You know, no. It's going to take a lot to make those 4 guys look weak.
Right.
Just put it that way.
And, you know, we're trying to get over the NWO here as this kind of dominant force. You've got to put the baby faces in danger, which is the Horsemen in the Dungeon of Doom in this instance. So we're just telling a story here. I'm with you. Well, Ted, speaking of the Horsemen, this is the 8th or so version of that group. This time it's with Flair, Anderson, Benoit, and Mongo. And man, there's no denying the success of the Four Horsemen up to this point. But, you know, at this stage, did you think it had run its course, or did you feel like there was still a little meat left on the bone if they were properly booked?
Well, if they were properly booked, I think there was still a little meat on the bone because, you know, the 2 of the strongest obvious characters in that foursome could carry it.
Yes.
And that's it. You know, Flair and
Arn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, Steve McMichael was green and coming straight off the gridiron here into pro wrestling, but I mean, he was charismatic as hell, entertaining to watch on screen, and man, Chris Benoit was a hell of a worker. You know, a lot of people, Ted, have a difficult time going back and watching Chris Benoit wrestle now, given the circumstances. You know, I personally will still watch a match of his because I can separate the man, you know, the art from the artist, so to speak. But I mean, Chris, not a name that we're going to discuss here very much on the show. So I guess now is about as good a time as any. Ted, his story is probably the most infamous in wrestling history, but I'm wondering about your thoughts when it comes to Chris Benoit.
You know, everybody who knew Chris liked him.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Benoit was not a guy who had a whole lot of enemies, and all I can say is that I don't know what caused him to go off his rocker like that, but everybody would tell you the Chris Benoit that I knew and that everybody else knew was not capable of doing that.
Yep.
I mean, you know, to kill your whole family and then kill yourself.
Oh.
It was probably, you know, that, to me, that's the biggest shock that ever, in my entire career. That was the most shocking thing that I've ever seen. And like everybody else, everybody was like, not Chris. Are you kidding? Nobody thought, I mean, it's like there are some guys that, you know, you could see some guys that were natural hotheads or whatever, you know, and there are a lot of maybe other guys, you know, in the wrestling business. You say, well, they might not be surprised, but everybody was surprised. Everybody was, I mean, surprised to like non-belief. No, it couldn't possibly. Chris Benoit could not possibly have done that. Yeah, yet he did.
And there were some folks in the business that I know had committed murder, had committed crimes, had been really kind of awful people outside of the ring. So, I mean, for a guy who had the success that Chris Benoit had, he had made tons and tons of money in wrestling. For a guy who had formed a family and a loving family, a man of God as well, by his own admission. I don't think anybody could have predicted what happened there with him. My goodness, what a tragedy.
No, I just, only God knows.
It's a shame. It's a shame. And
giant shame.
We'll try to get this podcast back on track here. On September 9th, the story of who the next member of the NWO will be takes an interesting turn, Ted, and you're involved in it. Let's have a look at this.
The power moves, but here comes Nick Patrick to ringside.
Nick Patrick is out. Nick Patrick motioning Luger to the back. Nick Patrick is going after.
Something's happened to Sting.
The back Luger is chasing Nick Patrick.
Something's happened to Sting, I bet.
I heard him say out back, out back. And there's, hold on, let's listen.
There's DiBiase.
I'm tired of this stuff, this DTA stuff.
No.
Don't trust anybody. He's got to go. You know why? You better learn to trust somebody right now.
No.
Up against the wall. We got no way out. It's either you trust him or you don't. Look at me in the eye. You know I'm.
What in the world is going
I know I
on?
can trust you. Now look at his eyes and know that you can trust him. I know I can trust him too. Look, I'm looking at him. I'm looking at you. Everything's gonna be okay.
No.
That's Sting's voice talking to DiBiase.
No.
Hey, stay right there. Stay right there.
No.
Where is he? Where's who? You know who? What
There's Luger.
Stinger, what would Stinger be doing with me? Look, Luger, I'm standing out here in the parking lot running my own.
No!
That's it.
No!
That's it. Oh, that's right. Oh,
No!
nice. Come on, finish. That's right.
Oh, we're in bad trouble now. We're in
I believe this. Sting has turned.
He's been bought off by DiBiase.
It is Sting and the NWO. No.
Oh, you thought you'd never see this.
No.
I said you can't trust anybody. You can't trust a soul here. And there you see it. Sting standing side by side with the NWO, beating up his partner Lex Luger and getting into that limousine.
What are we going to do for the War Games?
Oh, my God. DiBiase standing out there in the rain, and Hogan
Putting the boots to
Why
Lex
would
Luger.
Sting do this?
This crowd has no idea of what has just happened.
Well, there it is, Ted. I don't know why seeing Luger out there in his trunks in the pouring rain, laying down in a parking lot, and you putting the shoes to him. I don't know. It tickled me.
Once again, everybody's got a price.
I mean, so it would seem two people had a price here. Not only Sting, allegedly, but Nick Patrick, seems to lead Luger into a trap out there. I will say, though, Ted, Sting looks a little off here. And this, of course, would be revealed as the fake Sting, Jeff Farmer. But I'd love to get your thoughts on this angle.
Oh, well, I thought it was one of the better things they did, I thought, coming because, it appears to be one thing and it's like the old card trick, sleight of hand. Mm-hmm. Now you see him, now you don't. And will the real Sting please step forward? So anyway, and, overall, Marcus, the NWO angle, the NWO thing, in and of itself was, I mean, it was good. It was really good, but the thing that separates, to me, the two companies is, now what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. There was nobody in the Turner organization that knew how to keep it going, and there were a whole lot of chiefs and not enough Indians, if you know what I mean, in the dressing room, because all these guys had these, this thing in their contract, creative control. I only have to do what you tell me to do if I like it. Yep. And that never works in wrestling. It was good while it lasted, but the truth is, it didn't last long.
I've heard Eric Bischoff admit that there were times when he'd show up at TV and he didn't know what was happening that day as he's getting to the building.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember nights when the show is starting. I mean, the dang show is starting. It's a live show, and they still don't know what they're going to do in the main event. Those were exciting nights.
So, Ted, with that angle outside and the beatdown and, Sting seemingly joining the NWO, the match and the stage was set for Fall Brawl on September 15th, 1996. Hall, Nash, and Hogan are joined in the ring by the fake Sting, but the announcers are putting him over like he's the real Sting. They have Anderson, Flair, and Luger in trouble when the countdown begins for another member of Team WCW to come out. Let's have a look.
15 seconds remain.
He's stinger splashing everybody.
10,
Who can this be?
9,
Who can this be?
8,
Son of
7,
a- Here we go, guys.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What the?
It's Sting.
That is Sting. That is Sting. Oh, yes. Get on him, baby. He was telling the truth.
We've got two Stings.
Oh, yes.
He was telling the truth.
Okay, now clean house. Go to work. Get the Nature Boy. Get the Enforcer. Get moving. Start kicking some butt. Come on, Sting. Come on, Luger. Take Hogan out. Concentrate on Hogan. Don't worry that much about the other guys. Concentrate on Hogan. He's the one we've got to stop, and stop now.
There it is.
There it is. Stinger splash. Both corners got them both.
No question the elevation of those stinger splashes. That is Sting.
No, that is Sting.
But wait a minute, he's the only one fighting here.
He is doing it single-handedly. Sting single-handedly. He laid him out. You bet. He has taken the NWO to the water trough. He's done it all by himself.
Can you imagine?
And they didn't trust him.
They didn't trust him.
Well, you look at this now, confrontation. Sting just had words with Luger.
Is that good enough for you right there?
Wow.
Is that proof enough?
Not now, not now. He just
told him to stick it. He said, is that good enough for you? And he's leaving.
He showed him you thought I was a traitor. You thought I was a Benedict Arnold. I said I wasn't. You turned your back on me. Now I want to show you that I can take the NWO on by myself, and I don't need you guys anymore. That's the impression I get.
All right, so we're gonna pause the action right there. We'll pick it back up here in a few minutes. But man, I wanted to talk to you about this angle. I absolutely love this with the fake Sting, and then we bring out the real Sting to show that he was in fact the fake Sting, even though the crowd, all you had to do was look at the guy and it's Jeff Farmer. But Meltzer was kind of critical of the story. It's which, of course, is his job to pick things apart. I mean, there are holes, yes, but let's all just suspend our disbelief for a little bit and tell a story here. Sting feels betrayed by his friends, and they thought he was a traitor. I mean, pretty simple storytelling at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Well, and I didn't have any. I didn't have any problem with it, and again, like I like Meltzer too, but I said he's not the authority on,
right. What's good or bad.
He didn't write the wrestling encyclopedia.
Right. And look, a lot of his takes can be great sometimes they're off. I think in this instance, hey, let's not overthink it. We're just,
and you know what, that's just human nature.
Yeah. And
one man's apples, another man's lemon.
That's it. And Ted, this angle would be what would lead Sting to becoming that much darker character, the all white face paint, kind of reminiscent of The Crow, if you've ever seen that movie. We'll discuss it at length down the road, but just on the surface, Ted, what did you think of this change in character for Sting?
Well, again, I thought it was okay. I mean, it's, I guess the bottom line is, what did he think? I mean, yes, I guess with so much in wrestling, it's the timing, and was it really good timing to turn him? It may have been, it's kind of like anything you can do, like the guys, the wrestlers always put it this way. You always, in every show, you always want that holy shit moment when everybody goes, I didn't see that coming. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the people definitely didn't see that coming.
Right. Who could predict that, it's a little ways down the road here, but who could predict that Sting would turn into this darker character that's now hanging out in the rafters and kind of like, okay, is he good? Is he evil? And Sting actually credits Scott Hall with that character. Scott told him about the Crow character, and he was like, hey, I noticed you let your hair go dark. He's like, you ever think about growing it out? And, check out this movie, The Crow. And next thing you know, everything changes for Sting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of Sting is actually still active today. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, I don't know. I hope he's not doing much.
I mean, dude, some of the bumps that he takes on TV and on pay-per-view have been wild. He's jumping through tables and stuff. He's doing some pretty crazy stuff, but he's stayed in great shape. And by the way, this character that he's about to turn into, he's that character right now, the Crow Sting. So just really, really cool all these years later. I mean, it resonated so well that he's still doing it.
Yeah. Well, God bless him, man. Just, you've only got one body. And, as I approach the big 7-0, man, I tell you what, I get up in the morning and I let the hot water run on my lower back. And it's kind of like I gotta get the old oil can out to let's get all the parts moving again. So anyway.
So the NWO would win this match, and a brawl would ensue afterwards between the two sides. Savage would interfere because Hogan had caused him to lose earlier in the night against the Giant, and the NWO beat Savage down before this unforgettable moment happens in our fourth clip this week.
Wait a minute, Elizabeth is on her way to the ring.
Is Flair still at the ring or what?
I imagine.
No, Flair is back here.
That's Elizabeth that's come to. She better get out of there.
NWO.
What is she doing here?
She's a member of the NWO, isn't she?
Oh, come on.
What is she?
Oh, you know what's happening. happening here.
She is begging Hulk Hogan.
To leave Savage alone. She's still in love with the Macho Man.
Well, it seems that way. She apparently still another choke slam.
She couldn't stand to see all these people beat up the Macho Man. He's totally helpless in there.
And she's covering the Macho Man, begging these thugs to leave him alone.
So much water already under the bridge. What a disgusting sight this is right here. What a disgusting sight.
Wait a minute. They are spray painting Elizabeth.
What a disgrace.
This is
Hogan, you've dropped to new levels now. You're the lowest form of life I've ever seen.
Hogan wants a microphone. Don't give it to him. He has spray painted the dress of Miss Elizabeth. He is demanding a microphone now. And he got David Penzers.
You know what, guys?
This is insane.
Yo, Winston-Salem!
Wow.
You know something? These two losers, these two lowlifes, they made a sacred oath. And they said that they would be together until death do us part. Well, courtesy of the NWO, in Hollywood Hogan, we're gonna make that happen. Two pieces of trash.
Spitting on her, and the
Spits
Macho
on
Man.
Elizabeth. This is the lowest point in the history of WCW.
Woo! Holy smokes, Ted.
That was heavy.
That was heavy.
Yeah.
And wow. I mean, spray painting Elizabeth as she tries to protect Randy, then spitting on her. I mean, watching it back all these years later, what are your thoughts?
Heavy. Yeah, definitely heavy. And again, if that can't get you any heat, then nothing can. I mean, that was.
Yeah, you said it.
And either further solidifying the total turn of Hogan, from the superhero to the supervillain.
Yep. They always say that, as much as you're loved whenever you're a baby face, that's how much they'll hate you when you become a heel and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be the truth here with Hulk, because, oh man, and you heard the crowd chanting Hogan sucks or whatever they were saying. And just some, nuclear heat. And Ted, you're here. You're right in the thick of the action. You're standing in the ring when this is happening. You were ringside for War Games. And, in your past, you'd experienced a lot of wild heat, between the stuff with JYD and Tommy Rich, the $1 Million Man, of course, had a ton of heat. And now here you are with the NWO spray painting one of the most beloved figures in wrestling. Where would you rate your NWO experience as far as hottest angles of your career?
I wouldn't rate it as one of the hottest angles of my personal career, because I was not like I was not a main figure in the deal. It was Hogan, it was Savage, it was Sting, as the immediate guys, the guys that are still got the tights on and working. And I by this time became a mouthpiece, and that's all I was, just to pour salt on the wound, if you will.
Right.
But in terms of heat, it was probably one of the most heated angles I was ever been a part of, but I wouldn't rank it as like the top heat getter in my personal career.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And man, it's just watching it back all these years later, you can really kind of feel the electricity in these buildings, and Ted, there's a lot more at stake here at Fall Brawl than just the match. There was also a stipulation that if the NWO won, they would get their own show. Meltzer had this to say in the 9/23/96 Observer. Current plan, which could change, is for NWO to get the Saturday night show, either 1 hour per week or 2 hours every other week. The NWO TV show is a cute idea, but I don't know how they can work it. Who will they wrestle? If it's the same WCW jobbers, then it's obvious it's the same promotion. If they want to have competitive matches, it's not like they're going to wrestle each other, so they'll have to use the Marcus Bagwells of the world to put them over. Ted DiBiase will be the color announcer. No decision regarding play-by-play man. So, Ted, you and I discussed before that Bischoff's plan for you right out of the gate was for you to be a color commentator. And now it's looking like the plan is set to come together. Overall, though, would you say that you prefer being ringside as a manager or as someone who can occasionally get physical? Or would you prefer to be strictly behind the announcer's desk?
Man, I don't, looking back at it, I can't even remember exactly how I felt about it at the time, but I mean, I know that, okay, if I do this, if I'm at ringside and I'm being more physical, then I'm there more.
Mm-hmm.
But if I am just a mouthpiece, it doesn't require my presence as much.
Right.
And so based on the length of my career and where it's kind of like, I think I've said that a lot of this. I always promised myself that by the time I turned 40, I would be out of the ring. I might be part of the show, but I wasn't going to be a physical part of I wasn't going to be an active wrestler anymore.
Right.
And you know what? As I'm looking at 70, here in just a few months, I'm so glad I made that decision. Because there's a lot of other guys that are right about my same age that didn't make that decision. And physically, they're in much better, they're in much worse condition than I am.
Yes. Definitely a blessing that you stopped when you did, especially after the neck injury. It's just not worth that kind of a risk. But I mean, we saw you in the parking lot there kicking Luger and stuff, and I mean, here you are. This angle is just red hot. Is there any temptation in your mind at all? Like, maybe I could do like one more match, especially when something hot like that is going on.
No. I mean, I guess I put it this way. What would the $1 Million Man say? Everybody's got a price. Imagine if you offered me a boatload of money to put the tights on and do it one more time. If the price is right, I'm sure I'd go.
And man, let me say, looking at you in this era, you're wearing a suit, but I saw you in a t-shirt earlier. Like, you look to be in pretty good condition. Like, okay, he still looks like the $1 Million Man. He could still go.
Yeah, well, just so long as I keep the t-shirt on.
Maybe a change in gear for the $1 Million Man here in WCW. So on Nitro, the night after Fall Brawl, Sean Waltman would make his WCW debut, similarly to the way that you did by sitting in the crowd. And yeah, I mean, Sean, what a great addition to the NWO. But here we are. It's in a very, very short period of time. You've joined. We've got Fake Sting. We've got the Giant. Now we've got Sean Waltman. This is kind of the period when it starts to become, okay, everybody's getting an NWO t-shirt now, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're not done yet. Speaking of people joining the NWO, the next week we'll bring another new member after the NWO attacks Randy Savage after his match. And then you guys take over the announce desk. Let's check it out. It's our final clip this week.
Wait a minute. I'm getting out of here tonight. Wait a minute.
Hey, Chico, do your job, man. Do it well. Do your job, Chico. Huh? We told you so.
Joining the broadcast team.
Welcome the outsiders.
National Hall for the Outsiders. 6 in the background. Legendary Hulk Hogan.
And let's bring out our newest member, Ted DiBiase's head of security. Make welcome, if you will, a name very familiar to wrestling fans. Bring him out.
Get him out.
Teddy, where's
Get
Vincent?
off me. Vincent.
Bring out Vince.
Where's Vincent?
Vince, come on out.
Come on, Vincent. Come on, Vince. Easy.
Come on, buddy.
So let me ask you a question while we're waiting on Vincent. This whole thing here. Here he comes.
Are you a real model, or do you just look like one? Is the barbers on? What's the deal there?
Here he comes.
Hey, Vincent!
Come on, buddy.
What is who is
Hey, Bischoff. You're going to hang with the NWO, whether you like it or not, brother.
Here comes Vince, you know.
Come on, have some fun, man.
Hey, babe, welcome aboard.
Why so worried?
Don't worry, these checks never bounce.
Keep an eye on him, brother.
Hey, guy, hey, Scotty. Scotty, let me ask you a question. Now, we've taken over wrestling. That wasn't too hard.
That's for sure.
Okay, there he is. A guy you're pretty familiar there with. It's Virgil.
Oh, yeah, his one moment of glory.
And he's not Virgil anymore, as you heard. He's named Vincent here.
Yes.
What did you think of having him join the fold here at the NWO?
Well, you know, I mean, and again, I mean, it was an opportunity again for him because he had not been used for some time, in the WWF either, and so here was an opportunity for him to make a little money and come on board, and another familiar face. So, it was a good deal.
Yeah, in my mind, I feel like as long as it's a WWF guy or a guy who's been associated with the WWF, it makes sense because it's supposed to be an invasion in theory, right, of WCW by WWF talent. Now, the Giant doesn't fit into that, so I don't know what the story was there, but interesting in my opinion. I don't mind having Vincent now involved here. Ted, the rumor over the years has been that Mike was named Virgil in the WWF to take a shot at Dusty Rhodes, and now he's arriving in WCW as Vincent, which is a very clear shot at Vince McMahon. Can you confirm that Virgil was taking a shot at Dusty?
Yep.
Was this a calculated thing?
I mean, again, like none of those ideas were mine, by the way. I mean, it was kind of like I never knew Dusty's real name.
Oh, really?
That I didn't know that he was Virgil Runnels. But I obviously I found out. So somebody who I don't know whoever suggested it. So like, well, it's just if he's going to be Virgil for us, or in the WWF, then when it comes to WCW, somebody said, well, how about the Virgil? Obviously, Dusty was a big name. And it's like you can't get a bigger name than Vincent. Let's call him Vince.
It's turnabout is fair play. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's just funny.
I think I've heard Bruce Pritchard say, no, Virgil wasn't a shot at Dusty Rhodes over the years. And it's like, oh, come on, Bruce. We all know better.
Oh, yeah.
So, Ted, we're almost near the end of the episode here. Before we do kind of wrap it up, I have to ask, are you a NASCAR guy at all?
A NASCAR guy?
Yeah. Are you into car racing?
Not really. But, I tell you what, when, again, like the NWO had a car, and I don't know how all of that stuff transpired. And even now, when race car driving comes on TV, I really don't watch because it's okay. They're turning left again. Right. But when you're there, and like we were, like down in the pit, and those cars are going by bumper to bumper at 200 miles an hour, then you appreciate it big time.
Unbelievable amount of skill involved in being a NASCAR driver.
Yeah.
And I myself am not really a NASCAR fan per se, but I can certainly appreciate that. And you mentioned it right here after I asked about NASCAR because right after the debut of Virgil on this episode, Kyle Petty is announced as the official NASCAR driver for the NWO, and they bring the NWO car out and it revs its engine and it's right there in the arena. It's pretty fun, exciting stuff, and a massive crossover opportunity for WCW here, because a lot of racing fans also happen to be professional wrestling fans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just works really well. Ted, when you're seeing this, are you surprised by how rapidly this thing is growing and expanding and like quickly becoming a part of pop culture?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was like, wow. Just when you thought it couldn't get any bigger, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are everywhere. You're on TV shows. You've got the NASCAR influence now. Pretty soon, monster trucks are going to be involved here. So, I mean, the NWO in a very short time is leaving a very, very big footprint on pop culture in America.
Yep.
It's October 1996, WCW, of course. A lot of big stuff going on, including some pretty notable arrivals. Behind the scenes, J.J. Dillon arrives with the company in an office role. He had just left the WWF, where he had been in various management roles behind the scenes, including VP of Talent Relations for years. A role in which he claims credit for the signings of huge talents like The Undertaker and Triple H. Ted, how well did you know JJ, and did you feel like bringing a guy like him with his experience was a huge benefit to WCW, or just another cook being added to the kitchen?
No, I thought it was definitely something. I mean, because I've known JJ Dillon. I mean, the first time I saw him, he was a wrestler, and I can still remember the first match I watched him have in the Amarillo Sports Arena. He and Dick Murdoch had an unbelievable, what do you call it? They worked together. They worked a program, a whole program. And JJ was he was the villain. He was the heel, and Murdoch was the baby face. And I'm telling you, and then I'll be honest with you, one of my very first matches was with him, with J.J. Dillon.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, down in Abilene, I believe it was, and I can't remember why. I said, shoot, somebody didn't show up or whatever. And so instead of being a referee, I had this match with him, and it was easy. It was easy because he was very good at what he did and led me through it. So, I forgot. You know what? I forgot that.
How about that?
My very first match was with J.J. Dillon.
So not even necessarily one of your early matches. You think you had your first match ever with JJ?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
That is incredible. Well, Arn Anderson says it about him all the time. He was the manager for the Four Horsemen, but
Yeah.
he would get in there and wrestle every once in a while. And Arn always says, like, man, nobody could take a bump like J.J. Dillon.
Yeah, and he was great. I mean, as a wrestler, he was very good. I mean, he was a heel in Amarillo, and again, the program that he had with Dick Murdoch was just second to none. And I've known him that far back. A great guy, and personably, he's a great guy.
I've had the pleasure of meeting him on a couple of occasions, and I back that up. He's certainly a great guy, and yeah, I mean, what an incredible talent. And for him to transition from being like, hey, this great worker and great bumper, to all of a sudden being a great manager, and now here in WCW, he's behind the scenes initially, but then he's going to become WCW commissioner. He's great in that role. It's it's a versatile talent, isn't he?
Yeah, he could do it all.
I think it's also worth mentioning that in the 10/14/1996 Observer, Meltzer mentions that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes heat among Hall, Nash, and Hogan, with Hall and Nash already getting tired of their backup roles and frustrated with the amount of money that Hulk was making. Ted, as a member of the group, you're around all these guys a lot. Do you remember any kind of tension starting to brew among everybody?
Well, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't something that was obvious to everybody, but yeah, I knew about it. And it's kind of like, anybody that comes along and again, Kevin and Scott, they are, relative newcomers, and they're looking to prove themselves and get the opportunity. And of course, you're there, if you're the guy at the top, there's always somebody looking to knock you off the top. Mm-hmm. And so, and I guess politically at that time, Hogan also, Hogan had been Hulk Hogan. He'd been Hulk Hogan for the WWF forever and was the feature guy when Vince McMahon went national and global with his company. And it's like everybody would want that spot. And of course, this is a time now where Hogan has left the WWE and gone over. And, I guess, Scott and Kevin are like, okay, when's my opportunity?
Now, Hall and Nash, while we're on the subject, they're kind of noted shit disturbers behind the scenes. And I think I've even heard Kevin Nash say that, they were pretty giddy about the amount of money they were making coming in the door here from WWF, and they were happy to let everybody backstage know exactly what they were making, which is a substantial amount more than most of the rest of the folks were making.
Yeah.
Do you remember those two kind of stirring the pot behind the scenes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, like waving it in front of you, like, right. Look what I'm making and you're not. But for me though, personally, by this time, I didn't have to worry about that anymore because I was a manager.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a managing role, and so no, I wasn't gonna let that bother me.
So that's interesting, Ted, because you're in a management role, but you're like you're coming from being a wrestler, so I'm sure you still consider yourself one of the boys.
Oh yeah.
So now, with that being the case, are you able to avoid like the backstage drama, or I mean, like you're around these guys all the time? Are you like, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, it feels like it would be really hard to stay out of the backstage drama that's going to happen pretty much anywhere you go. Did you manage to stay away from it here?
Well, the reason I was able to stay away from it is because, number one, I think I had the respect of everybody for who I had been and the talent that I had. And now I'm getting to be one of the older guys, and I'm now in a managing role, which, is, it serves some importance, but it's not of major importance. And I believe that's why if I was still in a wrestling role, yeah, I'd have been in the middle of that mix. But if I was, if I had still been in an active wrestling role, I don't think I ever would have left the WWF.
So as a manager, you don't feel like you're doing that kind of scraping and clawing, trying to get to the top of the mountain anymore. You're like, hey, I'm a manager. Here's my role, and here's my salary, and I'm satisfied, and that was it, right?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, that's the other thing is that when I went to WCW, it's the first time I was on a guaranteed contract.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I was there or I wasn't there, I got paid. And that's another reason for me not to care.
It's pretty easy to be content under those circumstances.
Yeah. I've got my money is guaranteed. I'm not physically wrestling anymore. I'm in this manager's role. You guys go fight and have it out, and I'll just sit back here and watch.
Pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Something else that I saw in the Observer was that this is around the time when Bischoff is kind of calling meetings with a lot of the talent and outlining goals. And a lot of those goals were to put Vince out of business or to outdo Vince on shows. I mean, some of these became pretty infamous meetings whenever, they would reach the Observer because of some of the content of what Bischoff would say about putting people out of business and ending Vince McMahon's, reign of terror up there with the WWF. Do you have any recollection of being in any of these kind of wild meetings?
Oh, I mean, I heard it all, and I'll be honest with you. I just kept my mouth shut and watched, and oftentimes laughed. I said, nobody's going to put a Vince McMahon out of business, and especially someone who knows nothing about the wrestling business. And I'm sorry, but at the time, in my opinion, Eric Bischoff didn't know squat about wrestling.
I know that Eric would solicit advice from like Hogan, Hall, Nash, a lot of the guys that are on top, Savage, for another example. Would he ever come to you? I mean, nobody knows more about the business than you by this point.
Like I said, again, I came there in a managing role, and I managed to stay out of the way. and let me say this. I have nothing against Eric Bischoff. And he's personably a very nice guy, you know, and I never asked him how he did it, but I still wonder how he did it. I was like, how did you end up, you know, being the guy in charge of this? And, you know, because in my, it's like, until I went there, I'd never heard of Eric Bischoff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a recognizable name in wrestling.
Not necessarily a good fit on paper. However, I mean, the proof is in the pudding for Eric Bischoff. I mean, it's, yes, WCW would eventually tank, but I mean, like he took over, and I think it was 93. And
well,
they
I mean, okay, but the biggest angle in wrestling ended up being the war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's all these guys that had been with Vince that have now jumped away from Vince and are now working for the competition.
Right.
That was the biggest story in wrestling.
Well, Ted, our first clip this week, we're dropping in on the October 14th Nitro, as it seems a couple of new members might be joining the group. Let's have a look.
I know this will sound stupid. I don't even want to bother you with it. But, you know, lack of communication around here. But on the contract that Ted gave us, you know, about the limousine and the Learjets, and most of all, the money with the decimal point where it should be a little further back, that we should be getting the money, you know what I'm talking about? I don't know if it's just a screw up. I know, Kelly, Blue, you know, you don't know nothing about it, but, you know.
No, brother, that should all be in there. Turn the page. Where's my signature? No, the Learjets, the limousines, the money on the paper, that should all, whoa. I mean, I didn't sign that. Do you see my signature on that? You know something, brother? I didn't sign this. So this is the contract I laid out, but you know, you shouldn't have these shirts on unless I sign this. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what the hell are you talking about? I mean,
what I'm talking about is you don't wear our colors unless we tell you.
Unbelievable.
Take care of the family business for me. How do you like that, Liz?
Unbelievable. You don't wear the colors unless we tell you.
Hold this, trillionaire Ted.
See, he suckered those two nasties into watching.
Tag him.
And look at Sid. They're unconscious, the nasty boys. And why I may not like what they did here, attempting to join the NWO, quite frankly.
They deserve it.
This is too much. This is too much.
NWO, brothers. You know something, Macho Man? What you see here, Macho Man, is just a little bit of what I'm gonna do to you, brother. At the MGM, brother. Halloween Havoc. Giant, bring her over here, man. Bring her over here.
Get her out of there.
You know something, Macho Man? The reason your life fell apart is because of Hollywood Hogan. The reason I'm going to remain the NWO champion is because there's a pecking order, and I'm the greatest in the sport, brother. And the bottom line is, before your marriage was destroyed, night and day, Elizabeth dreamed about me. She had me on a pedestal.
All right. So, Ted, that kind of stuff is what really got the NWO red hot, because it was really starting to turn from like a faction into more of like a gang, like this sort of thing, like, you know, talking about putting on colors and whatnot. But the Nasty Boys, Ted, they couldn't have been more different from your performance style. We also always hear how absolutely crazy those guys could be behind the scenes. What were your experiences like around those two?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just that just, you know, like enough said. They're just ridiculous sometimes.
You're trying to think of a story that you can tell, and there's maybe none.
I'm trying to think of one, and I don't think I can find one.
That's all right. I won't hold your feet to the fire on it. Something else that stands out to me here is Hogan's statements at the end to Savage about Liz. We all know that in real life, Hogan and Savage had a real love-hate relationship, and rumor has it that Liz was at the center of their issues. Now here we are, and it's being turned into a storyline. What do you think about this blending of reality and storyline?
Well, I don't know, and I'll be honest with you. Back then, at that time, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of what was going on.
Really?
No. I didn't, and I didn't want to know. Be honest with you. Like I didn't delve into that. I mean, and nobody, obviously, I knew Hulkster and I knew Savage, and but it wasn't one of those things. I didn't know either one of them well enough to sit down and have a conversation like that with them.
And again, it's the businessman in you. It's like, hey, if I don't have to be in the middle of drama, I'm not going to insert myself into it. So
exactly.
On the next episode of Nitro, yourself and the NWO are ringside for a match between the fake Sting and Mr. JL when real Sting comes out with a very different look and attacks fake Sting. None of the NWO guys try to stop him, and instead, you take the mic and give Sting an offer. Let's check it out.
Hold on, no, come on.
Warren, welcome to the real Stinger.
No!
He's with him. He is with him.
And Sting, the NWO would like to give you a warm welcome too. We'd like to welcome you aboard. See, we could use a man like you.
No.
Whether you realize it or not, or whether WCW realizes it or not, the NWO is taking over.
What's that?
That is a fact. You understand?
He's not wearing NWO. He's not wearing their colors. He's not wearing that NWO. Look at the face.
There's nothing anybody can do about it.
Look at his eyes.
You see, if you join us, it's not like going to work for any other company. No, once you join us, then you're like family.
You got something to say to Sting, big man?
Stinger, if I may quote my most favorite American poet, Jim Morrison, I think it's time you break on through to the other side.
Don't do it.
I got a couple of questions for Sting. You've been carrying the WCW banner for 9 years and doing a great job. What do you got to show for it? We bring him out, a bogus imposter, and nobody knows about that better than us, because we knew it would get to you. WCW tells you to stick it. We want you to know we're taking over, and with you, there's no stopping us. You jump NWO, you're NWO for life.
Come on, Stinger. Come on, Stinger.
He's gone.
Come on.
They've brought the devil out of him. He reached down.
That right there is your cheap imitation. You get what you pay for, don't you? The real Sting may or may not be in your price range. But the only thing that's for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure.
Pretty good storytelling, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, at this point, I think that's kind of what's setting WCW apart from WWE. You know, WWE had kind of this emphasis on cartoonish, crazy, outlandish characters and storylines at this time. And then you flip the channel to WCW, and there's like gang violence, and there's this kind of storytelling. I mean, what do you think, Ted? Is that kind of what made the difference during the Monday Night War?
I'm not sure. to be honest with you, but I know this. I know that this, I mean, just this one big thing with all these guys who without them even thinking about it, owe the fact that they're a wrestling star to Vince McMahon. All of those, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, all those guys, Hulk, me, all those guys, the thing that put them on the map, the thing that made them a recognizable character was Vince McMahon in the WWF.
Yep.
And so, now these guys are sort of jumping ship for whatever reason and going to do their own thing. Okay. The one thing that Vince McMahon was still able to do was create new characters.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But there were no new characters being created in WCW. You follow me?
At least none that were really hitting, until Goldberg.
Well, exactly, because they didn't know how.
Until Goldberg came along, there was, they had like Glacier and some of these other guys come along, and it just was not working. But you're right. It's Vince McMahon, he put somebody on his TV. That's automatically somebody, where in WCW, maybe not necessarily the case.
And to that point, once that angle, that initial surprise, all these new guys, all these established WWF stars are now WCW stars. Well, now do something with them. Mm-hmm. Now, to make this, and they didn't have that.
Outside of the NWO, a lot of these guys that they were bringing in
what's your next big deal?
Yep. If you come in and you're part of the NWO, okay, you've got a really juicy storyline you can sink your teeth into. Anybody else, they struggled. They struggled to do anything with them.
Yeah.
And they would down the road when they brought Bret Hart in. They brought Bret Hart on board, and they didn't know what to do with him. And next thing you know, it's like his creative is all screwed up.
Yeah.
Well, look, I also want to talk about the new look for Sting. It's not quite dialed in just yet. He kind of looks like some kind of a weird mime here, Ted. But your mentor, Terry Funk, evolved himself. Chris Jericho and The Undertaker have also become known for changing and adapting to the times. And now Sting is doing the same thing with himself to kind of adjust to this new standard in wrestling. Did you feel like there was any difference or evolution in your character between the $1 Million Man and now NWO Ted DiBiase, or did there not really need to be?
I never really thought about that. I knew, again, it was, even though I was there, and of course, I still want to be a part of the business, have exposure and what have you. The thing that was more on my mind than wrestling, even at that time, was this new relationship with God and me going out and being a speaker and, if you will, a minister and ministering to people. This was all happening during that time. And that was, like I said, that's why I told them. I said, you guys probably need to turn me babyface because people are going to be seeing a lot more of me on Christian television, and the two don't mix, so I had a guaranteed contract. I showed up and I did what I was asked. And because I wasn't a wrestling talent anymore, I didn't really worry about it.
Now, that kind of brings up an interesting point in my mind, Ted. You had just come from the WWF earlier that year, and Jake Roberts had debuted in the WWF with a very, very different character from what he had been previously. Now, all of a sudden, he is a born-again Christian character, and he's preaching the word of the Lord on WWF television. And it makes me wonder, at any point, even in the next year, whenever you have this conversation with Eric, like, hey, maybe you ought to turn me babyface, did you ever consider bringing your faith onto wrestling TV or pitching the idea?
No, you mean with Eric?
Yeah.
No.
Do you think that Eric would have been receptive to it if you had come to him and said, like, hey, I'd like to bring, more of a faith-based character onto TV as a babyface manager?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Why not? Do you think it's just because he was going edgy?
I don't know. And personally at the time, I didn't care. I mean, it was kind of like I was at a point, and it's hard for me to explain this, Marcus. It was almost like, okay, I've got this contract. I'm committed to it. I've got a guaranteed contract. I'm going to do my best to do what they want me to do until this contract's over. But at no time did I even consider the possibility of renewing that contract, because
I'm with
my direction, it was like I was there physically, but I wasn't there mentally.
Okay. Now we're kind of starting to dig into it, where it's like, yep, you're involved in this hot angle and you're on TV, you're getting tons of exposure, but your heart is not there anymore because now your mind is in a different direction with your faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And again, when I left there, when my contract was, well, I told Eric, I basically said, look, I said, here's the deal, guys. I said, you got me over here, and I told Eric this. I said, you got me over here. I'm part of this deal. I said, I'm going out here week after week. I'm standing in a corner with my thumb up my ass. I got nothing to say. And I said, I didn't spend all this time developing a character and a personality, and a position in this business to come along and just be Hulk Hogan's belt bearer.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have any other ideas for me, just send me home.
And that's how it went.
And that's how it went. And I didn't care. I didn't care because they still had to pay me. And now I could refocus all my attention on the ministry.
All right. See, as I'm watching this, as a wrestling fan and a Ted DiBiase fan, I'm like, how cool is this? Like Ted DiBiase, he's in the NWO, he's involved in this red hot angle. I bet he was having a blast. But here in reality, you're like, nah, I think I'd rather be doing, something with my faith outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, by the way, go ahead.
And that's what I did,
Yep. You were out of wrestling after your contract would expire here in WCW for a number of years before you go back to the WWF and that behind the scenes role we discussed.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, we just talked about Sting, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. He just announced that he would be retiring from wrestling in 2024 after nearly 40 years as an active wrestler. He's still on TV with AEW to this day, and he still wrestles and takes some crazy risks like jumping off of ladders, going through tables. He's 64 years old doing that.
Yeah.
So Ted, what do you think it is about Sting that made him resonate so strongly with fans for all these years? Anything in particular stick out?
It's hard to say. I mean, he's just one of those guys that he got over and he stayed over and he knew how to, and he knew how to position himself and stay in a place where he, wouldn't be hurt, I guess. And it just, he became an iconic figure because, again, he was with WCW all the way.
Yeah, didn't end up going to the WWF until much later in his career.
Yeah,
and what's interesting here too, Ted, is I don't know if you've ever talked to Sting about faith, but Sting has talked about.
Hey,
you have?
Oh yeah, I mean, Steve and I together, and we went to a lot of ministry things together, actually. Wow. Yeah. It's kind of like it was kind of like it's something like he said to me one time. He says, I never knew you had that in you.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, we got pretty close there for a while, I mean, we're still friends when we see each other, but just people go their own way.
It's just interesting because you revealed here that your heart just wasn't really with it, and Sting has mentioned before that it's actually during around this time, maybe a year or two later, he's involved in this really hot angle, and he's coming down from like a helicopter at Club La Vila, and it's like all this crazy spectacle, and he's at the center of it, and all the fans adore him, but he was like, but I was miserable, and I wasn't happy personally or professionally. And here, what he was lacking was God in his life.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool and interesting that you two kind of found yourselves walking the same path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, back into the action here. We're at Halloween Havoc. The event set an all-time record for live gate and merch sales, bringing nearly $225,000 in ticket sales and nearly $70,000 in merch. I know you'd end up getting frustrated here in WCW, and certainly your heart's not all the way in it, but it had to feel pretty good to be something or part of something this red hot, right?
Yeah. Okay. It was like, hey, Marcus, by that time, I was like, I don't care.
You were just like over it, and it's like, yeah, whatever.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
At Halloween Havoc, you're acting as kind of like an NWO master of ceremonies. You're standing in the crowd, cutting promos and introducing NWO matches. You get involved in the match between Hogan and Savage, giving Hogan a weapon, then also pulling Randy out of the ring so that the Giant could attack him, which would lead to Hogan getting the win. After Hogan retains, there's another huge debut that happens here at Halloween Havoc. Let's have a look.
Don't even think about it. Hi. So you're bored, are you? I've come here to break your monotony. Hey, Sprout, why don't you just head back with a Jolly Green Giant and take a break?
Whoa. You know what, Mr. Piper? There's a big lack of communication here, because when I said that I made wrestling, when I said that I own wrestling and I control wrestling, now that I really think about it, I remember that you and I were running neck and neck.
Why don't you shut up for a second? It's my turn.
Be careful.
I am not here to represent the WCW, the NWA, the SPCA, the SOB, although I can be one SOB when I want to be.
Be careful. Be real careful.
Yeah, I made a lot of money being real careful. I'll tell you something there, Charlie Brown. You've been saying that if it wasn't for you, professional wrestling wouldn't be what it is today. Boy, do I got news for you. I come to you for a reality check there, partner. I come because, you see, I'm just as big an icon in this sport as you are.
All right. Man, he is a scene stealer, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, what a massive addition to the WCW roster. You've got Roddy Piper. What do you think of him arriving for this red hot product here?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a shot in the arm for sure. I mean, and again, everything Roddy just said is pretty much the truth. And I personally, I love that guy. I had a good time with him, and he was. I mean, here's a guy who was just. As a matter of fact, he and I were at Madison Square Garden the same time. This is the first time I ever. I think it was. I think it was the. It wasn't the first time I wrestled in the Garden, I think was going to be my last match in the Garden as I was leaving there the first time when Vince Sr. was still alive. And I can't remember what year that was. It had to be like 77 or
1979.
79.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the first time I saw Roddy.
Now, was that because I believe it was in the Garden, and I know that Vince Sr. was still running the show. Was that the infamous time when Roddy Piper made his debut, and I think it was Freddie Blassie stuffed his bagpipes with toilet paper so they wouldn't play?
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
I mean, that is a really mean rib on a guy just coming in the door.
No kidding. Yeah.
It set Piper back a few years too, where he wasn't able to. He lost his job that night. It didn't work out, and it took him a few years to get back to that stage. So, yeah, kind of a mean thing to do to a young guy.
Yeah.
Well, he's not a young guy here. At this time, Piper is 42, Hogan is 43, and Savage turns 44 the next month. Meltzer was very critical of the match between Hogan and Savage here, even saying that it was the ghost of Hulk Hogan that defeated the corpse of Randy Savage. So a little stiff in his review of it. You've spoken openly here on the show about your desire to retire by 40 because of the way that your father passed away in the ring.
Yeah.
But here you are, here are your contemporaries working against one another beyond the age of 40. What did you think of their continued involvement in wrestling?
Well, it's to each their own. I mean, again, my dad was 45, and there's a lot of things they know now, in terms of the body and ways to. I would say, in our day of modern medicine, the fact that my dad's arteries were, like as bad as they were, could be detected today. Back then, they couldn't do that. I mean, when they autopsied my dad, they said one of his main arteries to his heart was almost totally full of crap. I mean, it's like this the passageway of the artery, which is maybe this big, was like a pinhole for the blood to get through. And anyway. But yeah, I mean, I just made a promise to myself that I would not stay too long, and I've seen other guys. I mean, hey, one of my biggest heroes is Terry Funk. And my gosh, Terry wrestled until he was almost 70.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes. And he would be here in WCW a few years later, taking crazy risks, I think in like his late 50s or early 60s.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, but I mean, I just a personal decision, that I would not. And then there's a lot of guys now. Terry continued to look good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he didn't look like a washed up old man getting in the ring. I don't think.
And he wasn't trying to come out there and be this flashy technical wrestler by the later stages either. He was like, okay, I'm getting older, I'm gonna change my style. Now I'm a brawler, and he would come out and brawl with people and have hardcore matches, and it kind of worked.
Yeah.
Ted, the next year at Halloween Havoc '97, Piper and Hogan are gonna face each other in a cage match. So they're even a year older than they are here, of course, and that match would be dubbed the Age in the Cage. Just because of the age of these two guys climbing into there. I mean, do you think that featuring veteran talents against one another is the right approach, or should they have been paired with younger guys who can bounce around for them?
I don't know. It depends. I guess it would depend on the situation. Of course, I mean, where the fans are concerned, you get a couple of guys. Again, you get a Hogan and a
Piper
who are, relatively the same age, and that's interesting. An older guy with a younger guy. I don't know.
They might not have the same chemistry, older guy and a younger guy, right?
Yeah.
Something to think about. Well, the next night on Nitro, a big focus is, of course, on the recap of Halloween Havoc as they try to push for that purchase of the replay. You'll come out with Hogan at the end of the show as he cuts a promo on Savage before finishing up with a statement about Piper. Let's have a look at our final clip this week.
If there was ever any question in anybody's mind who the superstar of the 90s is, who is at the top of the pecking order, it was only proved when one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, the rowdy one, that little red-haired stepchild, Roddy Piper, came out and was man enough to admit that he always idolized Hulk Hogan and couldn't even lace up my boots. And when I looked in Piper's eyes, after he kept admiring my accomplishments, I saw the fear in his eyes, and as he turned his skirt and ran, that was the best decision of his life. And now, Mr. DiBiase, now that I've held up my end of the bargain, and the NWO for life, as soon as we get done doing what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go party with a big brother, Vince, and the new champs, the Outsiders. Tell them what I've been waiting to do, Mr. DiBiase.
We'll be in the business, man, that we are. Hollywood and I decided a long time ago that we wouldn't do this until we had taken care of business and firmly established the foundation of the NWO. And since we have the World Heavyweight title, the World Tag Team titles, the U.S. Heavyweight title, I think that foundation has been done. So for all you NWO loyals who would love to be entertained by Hollywood, tonight's the night. So Hollywood, go ahead, entertain them, brother.
Okay. So it's gonna end it like that's how the final Nitro of October that year goes off the air, is with Hogan doing like a dance and like a pose down. That's pretty weird stuff. But up until that moment, I mean, you know, you guys are they're booking heat in WCW, and NWO is holding all the gold. And you guys are being really antagonistic. And of course, you know, we hear that Kevin Sullivan was the booker at the time, and nobody booked heat like Kevin. Had you spent much time around Kevin Sullivan in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Kevin for years, and you know, and he and I, you know, it's like Kevin doesn't get along with just everybody, you know, and you know, he's the kind of guy he's gonna kind of feel you out before he allows himself to get, you know, too close. That's the way I kind of read him, and I always, you know, the guy's a sharp guy. You know, I thought he was really sharp, as a matter of fact, and I never had any problem with Kevin.
Now, his style is heel territory. Heels on top, babyface chasing. You had just come from the WWF, babyface on top with heels chasing. Which is your preference for a territory, Ted?
Well, again, it's, you know, I'm old school. It's kind of like the reason that, you know, like you take the guys that were NWA world champion, Harley Race, Dory Funk Jr., Terry Funk, Jack Briscoe, all those guys. When they would go into a territory, they would go all the way around, and they would wrestle the top baby face. Because it's because all the people in the crowd want to see their hero beat him.
Yes.
So the heel is the champion and the baby face is chasing.
You like that approach?
Yes.
I like that approach too. Because it's more entertaining. Like, man, is this baby face finally going to get it away from this bastard? And then when he finally does, it's like the big pop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Ted, also during that promo, I couldn't help but notice that you're not getting a lot of time on the mic, even though you were brought in to kind of be the mouthpiece for the group. You're here getting guaranteed money. It's less dates, as we've discussed, which means more time at home, and that's great. Plus, you know, again, you're part of the hottest angle, which maybe didn't quite mean.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like, you know, it's like I didn't, I didn't have to say a whole lot. I mean, everybody knew who I was. Everybody, I'd already established a reputation in the industry. So, I wasn't worried. I mean, it was kind of like, it'd be different if I was in the heat of the match. Mm-hmm. If I'm one of the guys wrestling whoever and doing whatever, but that was not my position. And so I was just, like I said, I had my money, I had my position, and it was a comfortable one, and I enjoyed it.
I thought it kind of worked too, because
sometimes less is more.
Yeah, and you're in the role of the financial backer here. You cut a promo every once in a while. You'll help out on commentary every once in a while. So, like, I don't know. I thought it kind of worked. That was one of the criticisms I was seeing online. Is like Ted's barely even talking here. It's like he's getting his opportunities. Plus, it's that's his role.
So, Ted, something I've been meaning to ask you about as we've been taking our look back here to 1996 and your time at WCW, is a performer that a lot of folks credit with influencing the way that wrestling is today, and a guy who's still active in WWE. We're talking about Rey Mysterio, and he's here in WCW at this time, and his high-flying style and uncharacteristically small size have made him a legend in wrestling. You and I talked on our last episode about, kind of the way that wrestling has gone nowadays with less emphasis on selling, more emphasis on moves and high flying stuff. And Rey is really kind of responsible for a lot of it. What did you think about Rey and some of the incredible stuff he was doing at the time?
Well, I mean, I personally like Rey very much. And the thing about it is this: for Rey Mysterio, who's, I don't even know if he's comes up to my, at least he comes up to my waist, but he's not a big guy at all. So he's got to have something different
to
offer. And what he had to offer was, the high flying stuff. But you know what? That's good for Rey Mysterio.
Mm-hmm.
All you other guys out there, don't go out there if you're 6'4" and try to do triple back somersaults. It's kind of, it's the bottom line with me. My whole objection with a lot of what I see on TV today is the thing that has changed is the match. And I'm sorry, but I personally don't believe that should have changed at all, because you're telling a story, and sometimes it's a short story because you may only have a 6-minute match, and then what you can do, or what and I'll be honest with you, it's really hard to have a match in 6 minutes, but it's just become all this high flying junk. It's just like I've seen these guys take beautiful bumps, these young kids. Take a triple back somersault, and if I ever took a bump like I've seen some of these guys take over the top rope to the floor, I'm not going to bounce up like a bunny.
No.
I'm going to stay down and sell it. That's what's missing. Sell it. And that's what sells tickets. It's before the fans can really get behind you. You got to, as much as you possibly can, in the time that you have in the ring, try to make them believe your story and make it as realistic as I can. Nobody tries to do that. Well, I won't say nobody, but very few try to do that anymore. And one of the guys that I think has become very good and more of an old style, and again, by a lot of the people who influenced him, was CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
He wrestles a more old school way. And that's my whole, you know what? I'm going to die on that hill.
And look, I don't blame you. And, it's like everybody says, and, I agree in many respects that, like all entertainment, wrestling needs to change and evolve. And I'm for it. Let's change, let's evolve, let's get better. However,
I don't think that you're getting better when you're not selling. And that was the cool thing about Rey Mysterio, was that, yep, he was doing some crazy shit and flying all over the place, jumping out of the ring, but
but the reason he got over is because Ray knew that for him to really get over and to do those fantastic things that he can do, he had to sell. Mm-hmm. He had to put himself in a position to where the people watching the story are going, come on, Ray, come on, you can do it, man. Get up, man. You can do it. Get it up, get up. And just, like the whole thing, one hand that drops and two hands it drops. And if it drops the third time, the match is over. And you keep that hand up and, okay, there's still life there. And here he comes. I don't know. It's just, I have a lot of respect for Ray.
When Ray started to kind of climb the ladder and move up the ranks, a big part of what was happening was that he was having a thing with Kevin Nash. I think this was in 1999, and he beat Kevin Nash. And like the whole idea was that he was in trouble throughout this whole match, and it was really easy for Nash, and Nash is just taking advantage of the guy. And then at the end, he somehow pulls it out. And that's
it's like, it's almost like, it's like, Nash has gotten comfortable with where he's at. And then all of a sudden, Rey Mysterio, like the quick little guy that he is, goes, toot, 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 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
And Nash is left in the ring going, no way.
And it works. It worked with 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon.
Absolutely.
Tried and true. But in order for you to feel like that guy is in danger and feel like, oh, there's no way he's going to be able to pull this one off, he has to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so much of it has become, it's more like a circus act now. I'm sorry, but what Ray understood, being that size, is that he had to learn how to just sell his butt off and sell and sell and sell. And then, start and I've watched him, he's really good. Make a good slow comeback and finally get full of fire. And then all those triple back somersaults kick you in the face, moves, they come across and everybody loves him.
And they mean more if they're not happening all throughout the match. If it's part of his comeback and he's busting out some of these crazy moves, then all of a sudden it's like, holy smokes, look at this guy making his comeback. Whereas if you're doing it all throughout the match, it's white noise. It's who cares? I've been seeing it, for 20 minutes now. Okay. Well, look, he was among all of the many talented people here in WCW at this time. And there's a guy who is working behind the scenes who's about to show his talent on the microphone now and show his talent as a heel. It's Eric Bischoff. He's officially going to join the NWO here in November. There had been some fishy circumstances here and there, and now the truth of the matter comes out, and he's out in the open as a member of the group. Ted, I know that you were frustrated because he ended up kind of filling the role that you were initially given in the group. But objectively, what did you think of his work as a heel?
I don't know. I mean, he was okay, but I mean, he was no great worker. I mean, it was kind of like, here was his opportunity to. But I get the one thing I got to give him credit for is, how he ever talked his way into that position.
Right.
The stroke of genius. I mean, he had never been a wrestler. He didn't know how to wrestle. And here he is promoting and calling the shots for a whole bunch of wrestlers for a company, excuse me, but WCW, they don't know crap about wrestling either.
You're kind of stuck in this role behind Bischoff now, that he's sort of the main guy on the mic and the guy who's sort of like essentially the spokesperson for Hollywood Hogan. And you'll come out with Bischoff and Vincent at World War III to confront Piper for a contract signing for a match, and Hogan and Bischoff and Piper will do all of the mic work. So there's Ted DiBiase, a guy who's renowned for his mic ability, and you weren't getting an opportunity to take the mic. Did you feel like Eric was involving himself out of just kind of like a stroking his own ego type thing? Or did you feel him in this over the top boss character was kind of like a crucial element in the story?
Well, I don't know what Eric was thinking. And I, quite frankly, by the time I went, and jumped off the WWE wagon and jumped to the WCW wagon. I wasn't physically wrestling anymore. I didn't really enjoy what my heart was into was being in the ring with the tights on and doing it. Mm-hmm. And so, it was just, I felt like my better days were past me, and I was just filling in time and making money. So, I was real excited about WCW. And I think I came to a place where, I thought maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. I don't know.
So despite, guaranteed money and I would assume some of the better money that you'd made in your career up to that point, it's all guaranteed, less days, you're home more. Despite all that, it was, you weren't creatively satisfied anymore or getting to feel the satisfaction of actually getting in the ring anymore. And you were not really enjoying yourself, huh?
Not really. No, not really. But
the money's just not everything, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, and the whole thing with Bischoff. Like I said, I mean, he hires me for a role, and then ultimately he puts himself in the role that he hired me for. Mm-hmm. I said, and I didn't get in his face or anything about it, but I did say, I said, look, I said, you seem to have taken that role. And I said, I'm not just going to go out and be somebody's belt bearer.
Right.
Yes. I'm not going to go out and just stand in the corner with my thumb up my butt, looking like Joe Idiot. So, if you don't have anything better for me to do, then just send me home. And I wasn't unhappy about that because he still had to pay me. And that's what ended up happening.
Well, it won't be long into the conversation before the rest of the NWO comes out, and we'll have a look at our first clip this week in this confrontation at World War III.
Whole world to see this. Show him the hip. Oh, no. Boy, you're a straight up dude, aren't you? You're really on the money, aren't you, honey?
What is he talking about?
Let me show the whole world what I've been talking about, Piper. Show him the hip.
Wow.
Huh?
That scar.
How about that, Red? Hey, you know something? I don't usually pick on cripples.
Wow. Oh,
I don't usually pick on people that are like Peg Like Pete. But since the whole world seems to like you, my friend, and since the whole world wants to see the war that didn't end the score, oh yes, my man, it's gonna be my pleasure to sign this contract.
There it is.
And let me tell you, Piper, now that I've signed that contract, you, my friend, are not gonna have a leg to stand on, because I can't wait to beat up a gimp.
Yeah, there you go, get after him.
He's going after Hogan.
Get after him.
He is sorely outnumbered here.
Well, he picked it, like I said, he's in there with him now. Hogan just a whipping on him.
And he knew what to expect getting in that ring.
You're right.
The NWO wasn't going to leave him alone. They don't want him healthy after he signed his name to that contract.
They can't hold him down.
No, they won't hold him down. Go get him. Tear his head off. He needs to get on him right there. Got it. Like you say, he's outnumbered.
Showing that scar, there you can see it. Hogan is going to get a chair.
Oh, man, he can't be doing this,
He's
man.
going to cripple him.
He can't do this.
He's had hip surgery, and Hogan's going to cripple the man.
That's what he's doing.
Oh, what a bad scar that is right there.
Oh,
no! No!
My goodness, the question is now, it's been signed, but could Piper compete?
All right, so there it is, Ted, the reveal of Piper's hip, and probably the weakest chair shot I've ever personally witnessed from Hogan on this card. Ted, it's funny. I talked to Jake recently about chair shots, and he said whether he was giving one or taking one, he needed it to be a stiff shot because you really can't make it look good any other way. What's your opinion when it comes to giving or receiving a chair shot?
Well, it's the same, but I guess the one thing that I would say is that anytime I took a chair shot to the head, I mean, I didn't just stand there with my hands down. It's like the old thing is, as that shot's coming, and so I could take a good chair shot, but the reason that, it's kind of like I took enough bumps and everything, but I mean, like I was never one of those guys that I'm going to stand there and just let you hit me in the head, even though it's a folding chair and all of that crap. I wasn't going to let anybody just hit me in the head. There was some, there's I love the business, but there's just some places you don't go. It's like kind of like the reason that we, wrestling is because it's sports entertainment. It's to me, like it's like playing football. But if you're a football player, you're not going to take the helmet off and let somebody hit you in the head with a chair.
Try to tackle somebody without your helmet on or any crazy risks like that. Yeah, it's I can't imagine that it's always perfectly timed even when you're getting your hands up to block a chair shot. Has anybody ever slipped one past and really got you good with a chair?
Yeah, I mean,
who remembers though after you take a shot like that?
Nobody ever just came after me with a chair. It was always worked, so to speak. Jake and I, we had a lot of good matches, and we had several matches where we ended up bleeding, and I've taken a shot from him. He's taken a shot from me, but it's just knowing how to do it.
Did you ever let somebody get juice with you hard way, or were you always bleeding to get there?
No, I never let anybody hard way me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun to me.
Yeah.
Well, the stage is set for Starcade with Hogan and Piper, and Meltzer would say that this angle was good, but too bad the two of them actually had to work a match. Now, Ted, were you optimistic that these two older performers, they're both in their 40s here, were you optimistic that they could carry a main event at one of the biggest shows of the year?
I had no doubt. I mean, you're talking about, of course, two of the biggest names in the wrestling industry and who had handled themselves very well, obviously, or wouldn't be in the positions they were in. But to say that these two guys couldn't go out and have a match is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're going to have some kind of a mat classic. I don't think that they're going to, go out there and do any top rope maneuvers. But I think that, a couple of guys with great charisma and great storytelling, it's like, okay,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so Ted, the big gimmick for World War III is, of course, a 3-ring, 60-man battle royal for a shot at the world title. Ted, 60 men jam-packed into 3 rings, and this is not like the Royal Rumble where it's like, every couple of minutes somebody new comes out. Nope, the match starts with 60 dudes in 3 rings fighting. What did you think of this concept?
Well, I was just happy I wasn't the one that was going to have to determine who went out first. Who went out last, and everything in between.
Well, if I was in it, I'd be volunteering to get out of there first. Just eliminate me. Let's see.
Yeah.
Go home.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, Ted, battle royals. What do you think about them? Because it's especially something like this. I mean, I'm trying to paint a picture for people here. It's 3 rings, 20 men in each ring. I mean, what the hell do fans focus on? I have a hard time.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't think it's ever been done again, and I hope it's not. But I think that just the advertising something so huge, I guess, would spark the curiosity of the fans one time. I mean, I can't. I have you ever heard of another 60-man battle royal?
I mean, not since WCW stopped doing them. It was not the Royal Rumble, and yeah, I mean, like the camera.
Well, yeah, and I tell you what, if you watch if you watch a match like that where you got maybe 12 guys or even 15 guys in the ring, and you just have to do it. You find out, it's like I always knew, okay, when so-and-so goes out, I'm next.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's how everybody did it. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to go out right after he goes out, and that's so there was no confusion. So you knew you were in the ring until, the guy that's going out right before you takes a bump and goes out, and over the top. I think it was either over the top rope or by pinfall, but most of the time it was over the top rope.
Yep.
And if it's done in a good way, it can be a pretty fun, exciting match, especially when it gets down to like maybe the last 4 guys.
Oh yeah.
And I can remember watching a match like that in Amarillo, and the last 3 guys were Dory Funk Jr., Terry Funk, and I can't remember who the last guy was, but now you got 2 brothers in there that everybody knows, and now they got to try to get each other out of the ring.
Right. Like, obviously they're going to team up against the other guy at first, but once he's gone and it's just the 2 of them, it's like, okay, this is going to get interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's like, I love battle royals in general, but man, 60 guys in a ring, or even 30 guys in one ring all at once. That's the nice thing about the Rumble is that they stagger bringing people out. So it's not some insane mass of humanity in there. Ted, when you're in a battle royal, like, what's your strategy to avoid catching like an errant elbow or getting a knee to the face? Because there's a lot of body parts moving around in there.
Yeah, I would always find a corner.
Okay.
I'd get with somebody and I'd lock up and I'd pull them into the corner with me, and I said, okay, let's fight. You hit me a few times, I'll hit you back. But and sometimes there were a few like high spots done in battle royals too, but you had to know when it was coming. And then I can't remember just how they. Everybody knew, it's kind of like when so-and-so gets with so-and-so, everybody get out of the way because they're going to do this, whatever. So.
It's funny. I've asked Jake that question before too, talking about the Rumble. Like, he's like, "Oh, I hate him. I hate being in battle royals and Royal Rumbles." He's like, "Because it's just dangerous. You never know if you're going to catch an elbow." And I'm like, "So what is your strategy?" And he said the same thing as you. He's like, "I go and find a corner." And so now that I've heard you say it, I'm like, "Is that just everybody's strategy? Everybody's just trying to get into the corner?"
The smart guys try to find a corner. Yeah,
that's just the savvy veterans. Well, look, the next night on Nitro, the NWO gets yet another new member as Buff Bagwell turns on his partner Scotty Riggs and joins the group. Ted, Buff is not a name I see us having a lot of discussion about here on the show. What did you think about Buff Bagwell and his inclusion in the group?
Buff's a decent guy. He's a good-looking guy, but I didn't ever see Buff as being a big star.
What do you think that he was missing? He's got the looks. He's good in the ring. Like, he's fair on the mic. He's got decent mic skills. Like, what do you think was the X factor that he just did not have?
Well, I mean, I guess because it's like you could have a good match with Buff, but I don't think you could have a great match with Buff, and have a 30 or 40 minute match with him.
Okay.
I don't see having a long match with him, and again, I like the guy, Obviously a good-looking guy, and he was a good hand, maybe better than average, but there lies the deal. Some guys make it all the way to the top, and some guys don't.
Not a guy who can carry a match. If you put him with a bad opponent, maybe he's not capable of turning it into a good match.
Yeah.
Larry Zbyszko has not been an in-ring performer for years at this point, but he and Scott Hall are here teasing working together during this time. Ted, have you had a lot of interaction with Larry over the course of your career? It feels like this would have been the only time you guys had crossed paths.
Larry Zbyszko?
Yes, sir.
I think the first time I went to New York, Vince Sr. was still the boss, and I don't know how long after that Vince Jr. took over. But that's the first time I saw Larry or met Larry, because he was working there at the time as well. But I've never really worked with Larry ever.
It seems like a guy, that I think you would have had good chemistry with. And yes, I was trying to think over when would Ted have had?
And he was close, and Larry, I think Larry was pretty close with Bruno Sammartino.
Yes.
Yeah, they were pretty tight. And that's the other thing. Bruno was he was very good on the mic, and he had a great body, but he wasn't like a Funk. He wasn't like a technical, grappler, but very believable nonetheless. Very believable. So there you have it.
And I mean, we were just talking about finishers that are kind of not these big crazy, over the top moves. I think Bruno's finisher was like a bear hug. And he got over. He was one of the biggest stars in the world,
Yeah, that's because they made that special. I guarantee you, when another wrestler came into the territory, what's your finish? And please don't say bear hug, because only one guy has the bear hug, and that's Bruno.
Yep. Well, the NWO wasn't done gathering members just yet. Let's drop in on the 12/9 episode of Nitro and have a look at your introduction of a new member.
Into the holiday season, and that means into the Starcade season.
Hey, here comes DiBiase. Obviously not happy with the words out of the mouth of Piper.
Well, is he coming here to our location?
What, do I look like the Great Kreskin or something?
I don't know. The last time an NWO member came out when I had the microphone was last week, and they chased us all away.
Look, I'm not worried about DiBiase. It's just all the thugs together.
DiBiase is watching the match. There's a power slam from Enos.
Nice one, too. Enos, good snap.
He is standing on the other side of us.
Wait a minute, he's got contracts in his hand or something.
He does have a paper in his hand.
We've already seen the defection starting with Marcus Bagwell.
That's right, it happened a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Wall Street picks up Mike Enos. Stock market crash. 1, 2, 3. And he disposes of Enos quickly. So who's getting the contract? What's going on here?
I don't know. Enos was distracted. I don't know.
He's handing it to Wall Street.
And Wall Street doesn't need the money.
Is Wall Street joining the NWO?
Wall Street, yeah.
Oh, man.
They only do.
Your old tag team partner and you were reunited as members of the NWO.
Yeah.
Obviously, most fans knew, okay, it's the $1 Million Man and IRS from the WWF. It's just interesting now to see him here. He's in WCW as VK Wall Street. He was also once known, I don't know if you knew about this gimmick, he was Captain Mike Rotunda in WCW a few years prior, and a captain, like a ship captain gimmick.
Yeah.
It feels like a guy like Mike, a performer of his quality, could have been used better than a VK. VK, by the way, being a reference to Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Yeah.
Wall Street. Feels like maybe he could have been used better over the years. What did you think?
I think so. I do, because Mike had the talent. He had, and we worked well together, and he interviewed well. I don't know. I really don't know why.
It's strange. It's
Yeah,
strange.
it
And I
is.
know, you know, we did a episode about Money Inc. Part one of our talk about Money Inc. A few months back, and I never asked you this question, Ted. The IRS gimmick overall in the WWF, too cheesy, or do you think it was kind of perfect for him?
Well, I don't think he had done anything, anything else like that prior to that. But I don't know. I hard to really. I don't know. Maybe kind of like being the $1 Million Man. That's like, well, okay. This guy's this ultra rich. I see that, but to me, the IRS it's kind of like if you're going to call yourself the IRS, then you should obviously be a heel because nobody likes the IRS.
I think that was Vince's whole thing. He was getting all these crazy taxes and whatnot and fees, and he was like, I hate the IRS, and that's how he like came up with the character. It's just funny because it's like, okay, is this guy like, what is he, like an accountant? Like, he's not the IRS. His name is Irvin R. Shyster. Like, what is this gimmick? But weirdly, it's Mike's biggest claim to fame, really, and he made it work. He took maybe questionable creative and had a nice run with it.
Yeah, he did.
Kevin Sullivan at this time is feuding with Chris Benoit, and the crux of their issue is a real-life affair between Benoit and Nancy Sullivan that's being used as the story. Sullivan is the booker at this time, which makes the whole thing even more insane. I mean, holy shit, man. Have you ever seen anything like this in wrestling before or prior?
Nope.
What did you think about it?
I didn't. I kept all of my thinking to myself. I didn't want to get into that. That's something I just stay as far away from as I can.
Man, that's the veteran move, to stay the hell away from that situation. Because look, Kevin Sullivan he's a wrestler, but like I said, he's a booker, so he's office too, and now he's in charge of booking creative for the guy who's having an affair with his wife.
Yeah.
Man, that is a rough scene.
Yeah, and I don't know how I can't remember how that story ended either.
I know that they would end up getting into like some pretty physical matches together, and I think that Kevin was taking out some of his aggression during those matches. Well, Ted, you take over commentary on the next Nitro along with Bischoff after running the usual crew away from the table. We know that you'd make the transition to commentary during your time with the WWF, so it was nothing new for you at this time. But what would you say was the most difficult part of that transition, going from being a wrestler to now all of a sudden a personality on a headset?
Well, it's just something I had to get used to. I know that I remember the first couple times I did this for Vince. He called me and he said, Ted, he says, I'd like you to come back. And I think this was a Survivor Series in Providence, Rhode Island. It was, and he says, like I want you to do color commentary. And I said, wow. I said, okay. And, I can't remember who was with me, I don't know if it was him, a lot of times it was, but I know Gorilla Monsoon is somebody that I've worked with a lot, when I started doing that, and I got more familiar with it. It's kind of like, Vince would be the play-by-play guy, and, Vince would say, call the shots that were happening. And I the other guy is supposed to what's the word?
The color commentator.
Oh, the color. Yeah. Wow. Gosh, that's going to cost him. He's going to probably get his head knocked off for that. Whatever. But yeah, do the color. And, it was okay. But again, there's nothing I did after getting out of the ring physically that I really, really enjoyed. I mean, I was just happy to be part of the business.
So, Ted, it's also around this time that DDP would throw one of his now famous Christmas parties, and apparently a lot of talents and office people are there to see Steven Regal headbutt and knock out Van Hammer, who is apparently spouting off at this party. So, Ted, these parties by Dallas have become, famous over the years. Dallas throws a giant Christmas bash. He's like Mick Foley. He loves Christmas. Please tell me that you were there at one of these Christmas parties over the years.
I don't know that I was ever at one of the Christmas parties, but I know the first time that I met Dallas, I was the $1 Million Man, and he was a bartender at a bar in Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay.
That's where I met him, man. I can still remember. That's probably one of the drunkest nights of my life too, because I can remember, like sitting down like they had a bar, and but the seat I could sit on the seat, and I could lean back and put my head on the counter. Okay? So imagine this, with my mouth wide open, and Dallas just taking the booze and pouring the drink, mixing the drink in my mouth.
I knew where you were going as soon as you said you could lean your head back.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and after that, there's not much more I remember about that night.
I don't imagine.
Dallas, I love Dallas. I mean, my wife Melanie and I have gone, and we've stayed with him and Paige, and he lives in the Atlanta area, and he's got DDPY yoga, and man, I tell you what, it works. And I need to get my big dumb butt back on it, because I was going good there for a while, and now it's like I wake up and every day is something different. So damn, I was taking a shower and all of a sudden I went, oh, whoa. Where'd that come from?
When you start getting shower-related injuries, you're getting...
yeah. I didn't slip or fall or anything. I just washed the back of my head.
All right, let's get to Starcade. There are more than 9,000 fans in Nashville, and you are ringside for the main event as Hogan takes on Roddy Piper. The crowd is going wild for Piper here, which really speaks to the incredible drawing power that these two still had over these years. I mean, Meltzer can say what he wants about, like, oh, geez, too bad they had to have a match in the ring. It's like, look, these guys are draws, and they're telling a story here, and they certainly did. Let's drop in on this match.
Yeah.
Over. Hogan, a la Roddy Piper, pulling himself up with every effort he can in his body. Here's the big leg. He missed it. He was going with a big leg.
Piper's alive. Piper's up on his feet. That's not Bugs Bunny hopping there, pal. That's Roddy Piper.
The way he hopped out from Gene Okerlund.
He's moving right now, and this building's starting to erupt. That's some movement coming down here now.
The Giant's here.
The Giant.
The Giant has come out.
He's going to choke slam him.
He's going to choke slam Roddy Piper.
Of course he is.
Here comes a fan.
He's got Piper up. There's a fan in the ring, for crying out loud.
Yeah, he ain't in that long. That's the wrong place to be.
Piper kicks Hogan down. Piper up in that choke slam.
Piper's a bite, and he bit him right on the nose.
He's gouging the Giant.
There you go.
The Giant's out.
He's got rid of the Giant. Now it's just Piper and Hogan.
What is behind him right there? Sleeper on.
He's got the sleeper on Hogan.
Good night, Irene. He's got him. He's got him hooked good. Real good.
I told you. He's got him hooked good as right.
And he goes down.
Got him down. And the referee Anderson is still on top of the ball game right there.
Check his arms. Check his arms. He's going out. He is going out.
Yes, he is. Randy Anderson's got it up for one. He's got it up for two. Here it comes.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
He put it in the safe. Roddy Piper. He said, I'm not with the NWO. I'm not with WCW. I'm for myself. I'm all by myself. I don't want help from... Look at this, standing on Hogan with one foot.
The Giant is up. Piper!
Yeah, don't wait. Don't wait, baby. Go ahead. Deal on him.
Roddy Piper's got to fight on the outsiders.
Get out of there. Fight out of there. Stick and move. Stick and move. Stick and move.
And that's what he's doing.
Find your way out, brother. There you go.
There's your winner. There's the man with the bad hip that came all the way from home.
All right. So one of the biggest shows of the year. I mean, a huge reaction and like a finish that we just don't see happen very often. Normally by the time the arm drops the third time, the guy starts, hulking up and the match continues. But man, that was the finish. What did you think?
Yeah. I thought it was good. And it's good to do that. I mean, it's good. It's good to do that because, it's kind of like you just said, you're expecting that third time for it to, okay, now he's gonna start coming out of it, and then he doesn't.
Yep.
Anytime you can fool the crowd, it's a good thing.
And they all went silent because I think everybody was shocked. Like, did his arm actually just fall? And then the big pop happened.
Yeah.
So really cool moment. And by the way, like I said during the match, a fan tried to hit the ring, so that's when you're doing booking right?
Yep. That's right.
So here's what I've been wanting to talk to you about when it comes to this, though, is, this clean victory over Hogan is interesting because we hear all the time that Roddy did not like to get pinned. And even when he worked as a heel in the WWF, most of his matches were ending in DQ or count out. Jake has actually talked about it before and said that he thinks, it's absurd to not allow yourself to be pinned in wrestling. I know that you worked with Roddy a number of times in the WWF. What can you tell us about Roddy refusing to take a clean loss?
Well, I don't think that we ever talked about it. I mean, I just, we did what we did. And I think, when I was working with him, I was the heel. I mean, I was never the baby face, working with him. And so, I don't know if that was ever even brought up.
Oh, okay.
And I'll be honest with you, until you just said that, I didn't realize that he didn't like to get pinned.
Yeah, that's a big part of his reputation. And,
and I wonder how that got by me.
I guess probably because, like I said, or like you said, you were the heel, so you didn't really have to deal with it. And then plus, it's I think that he started to develop this reputation before you even arrived in the WWF. And he was gone, right? He would have been gone by the time you debuted for the WWF.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would not take clean pinfalls. And actually, moving forward from this, they're gonna have a rematch at Super Brawl. And apparently Piper is going to refuse to let Hogan beat him with his leg drop. And Scott Hall is going to call Piper out backstage about it and say, like, hey, Hogan did the favor for you at Starcade, and you can't put him over clean here at Super Brawl. Like, it's bullshit.
Well, I'll be honest. I didn't know it. I mean, but I'll be honest with you. Scott was right. That's, and I liked Roddy, but that's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the business is a work. And who are you to think that you're so good that you're never going to get beat by a 1, 2, 3 count? That's just, I'm sorry. I would have told him the same thing.
Yeah, it's silliness.
It's just crazy.
Hard to wrap your head around, especially because Piper is kind of like an old school guy, much like yourself or Jake and, this generation. I don't know. I know that he had a hard time when he was first coming up in wrestling. So maybe that kind of jaded him where he was like, hey, I need to protect myself in this business.
Yeah. Well, there's ways to protect yourself, but refusing to get beat. It's always the how and the when and the why. Okay. There's, I don't know. Again, you have revealed a couple things to me about guys I've known in the business for 40 years that I never knew before. Just one episode of our podcast. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it goes to show that you were keeping your nose out of other people's business, which is great. That's why you had a nice long career. It's funny because it's such an individual business, wrestling. You're focused on your individual contract, your individual look, your individual creative. And it's interesting hearing you and Jake talk about wrestling, because you guys were both just focused on like, okay, how's this match going to be great? Because Jake has always said, he's like, I don't give a shit if I get pinned. It's, you know, it's all a work. I don't care. And I know that you feel the same way too.
Exactly.
So it's like, you guys are just focused on how do we have a good match, and thereby you guys always had good matches.
And it's the other thing about, you know, it's like, it's not, okay, it's not just getting beat. I mean, but there's a way to get beat and keep your heat. It's even if it's a pinfall, it's like, how did the pinfall happen? In other words, it's like, it should never, you know, like if you're a heel, and especially if you're working a program, it should never be that the babyface just beats the shit out of you and then beats you. For an example, maybe the babyface makes a big comeback on me, bing, 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 and then he goes for a move, and I sidestep him or something, and it looks like I'm going to get something on him, and he reverses it, and down I go, and he rolls me up 1, 2, 3. But I mean, just to get your ass totally kicked, slammed, suplexed, or whatever, 1, 2, 3. No, not like that. I think if you follow what I'm talking about.
I do. It's like there's certain ways to do it.
There's certain ways to do it without losing your heat.
I've also heard about heels taking this method, which always makes me laugh because it's silly, but it works. Where if somebody beats you, and even if they beat you clean and wind up kind of kicking your ass during the match, afterwards the heel just says like, "No, you never beat me," which I think is a funny way to do it, because that'll piss the audience off too.
Yeah. What are you talking about? He didn't beat me.
Yeah. And it's like, everybody saw it. It's on national TV, but you just flat out refuse to acknowledge it. I think that's one way to go about it.
$1 million dreams, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a pod, everybody's got a